It's 2 p.m. and the Board of Commissioners workshop meeting is called to order on October 23rd. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Mayor Black,
Present?
Vice Mayor Weinstein,
Here.
Commissioner Oakley,
Here.
Commissioner Hodges,
Here.
Commissioner Douther.
Present.
First thing on the agenda is public comment. We're now opening the meeting for public comment. Please remember to state your name and address, speak directly into the microphone, and please be civil and pleasant. Thank you. Anybody? All right, public comment is now closed. We'll have an opportunity after each agenda item to speak. The first item for topics for discussion is the Johns Pass Resort Development. Director Patel.
Mayor and Commissioners, good afternoon. The representative from the Johns Pass Resort proposal is here to give you a presentation on some changes they've made to their draft proposal, and also to report back to you on the outcomes of the neighborhood meeting that was held September 6th. Since that time, they've also proposed a joint use agreement, and that language has been included in your packet. So I believe that these be here to speak to all of those issues. We have made a request for the full packet, both the video and the written report on the neighborhoods meeting. We don't have that in-house yet. We have not processed the amendment or the proposal in any way, waiting for it to come back here. At your meeting in August, you had asked that they go ahead with the neighborhood meeting and then come back here, be placed on another workshop agenda so that you could effectively have yet another neighborhood or a community-wide opportunity to talk about it, and hopefully that this discussion would include input he had gotten from the neighborhood meeting. It says the purpose here. Mr. Bodziak is here to make a presentation and to answer any questions. It is the staff's hope to receive some sort of direction on this. We have not, as I said, processed the application through to Planning Commission or to come back here again, because as owners of Fisherman's Alley, which is included in this development proposal, we can't process any applications for development there unless the owners have requested it. So the city being an owner until and if or when you get to a point where you are directing the staff to negotiate some sort of agreement, I can't even begin to process the application for zoning change.
Director Portal, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Though? But we're not eliminating or curtailing it all. It was my impression that we were to see the video and the presentation in the event we were not at the September 6th meeting, which I wasn't at. I don't know what other board was
Right,
there.
actually.
But we're not eliminating that because that is part of that code.
Correct. The code does require that if the developer has made any assurances to people at the neighborhood meeting, that those assurances must be reflected in the design. So we'll have to review that very carefully to make sure that anything that was promised at the meeting does reflect in the design, any final design that's submitted.
Okay,
And
so
we
we're
haven't
not
had a chance to do
premature in
that
this
yet.
meeting, though.
No,
It's not
at this
premature
point,
because
you can't vote or anything at this meeting, and the idea was just to come back and give the community another opportunity to hear the presentation. And also, hopefully, we get some sort of direction from you, whether you even hope to go forward with this at all.
Good afternoon. Jack Bodziak, I'm the architect and the owner's representative. My understanding was this was really just another opportunity to bring you up to on some of the directional changes we made to try and accommodate some of the discussions we had with the committee members, with the council members over the course of the last couple of months, going back to our individual meetings. So I think what we've tried to do is make some adjustments and make a clear picture of what we're trying to do, the adjustments we've tried to make to accommodate some of the things we've heard back and feedback from you folks, and also from adjustments we've gotten from discussions with people relative to the project. So I understand this was just to be sort of another informational meeting, and that'll all come to another meeting before we really get moving on this thing as far as the process goes. So without further ado, let me kind of give you just a quick, brief rundown of where we are on this stuff and give you the background again, just to walk you through everything, and then we can go through the specific points, and I can answer any questions you have. Basically, as you'll recall, the 16-foot alley that runs down the middle of Fisherman's Alley is the orange on this. The yellow is what it would be expanded to as a 24-foot lane. As a 24-foot lane, it becomes a real traffic road, so to speak, for service, trucks going back and forth. It would be paved. The utilities that are in the road would all be upgraded, which the estimated cost that I've heard is $350,000 to $400,000 to the outfall, if you'll recall, that goes out behind Waltz into the bay is in bad repair. And as part of our agreement, we had agreed when we first discussed this, we had agreed that we would make that repair of the outfall into the bay because it is in bad repair. There also are utility lines that run down through here that are in need of repair, and we would need to resurface the entire thing to make it an actual 24-foot lane. Aside from that, the other side of it, the reason for the joint use agreement is if we had to develop the thing separate of the joint use agreement and not be able to go across the alley above it, or even we can on the ground, but on the upper levels, the problem you get into is you cannot have as much parking. You can't get as much per floor. And the reason is that when you take a 24-foot drive aisle and 20-foot deep parking spaces, which they really need to be in a parking garage, they can be 18 feet on the ground, but in a parking garage they need to be 20 to allow for structure. So when you go to a 24-foot drive aisle and a parking lane on both sides, the problem is when you go up a ramp, if you can't turn around to go for another turn, the other turn would be over the alley. So in other words, we have no structures that are inhabited, so to speak, except for probably just transitional hallway maybe. We have nothing above that but the lane that allows us to get 2 more lanes of parking. What that does in essence is within 3 stories, we go from being able to put roughly the parking we need for the building, which is about 150-something spaces, we go to being able to put 297 spaces, which what we've done is planned on that would become public parking. We would do a revenue sharing agreement with the city based on the number of spaces that we're adding and the additional area that we're adding to the building from the alley below. So I think that to walk through with the joint use agreement, we would have the new resort hotel, we'd have the tourist water park that we propose on the upper level on the side of the boardwalk alley, or street rather. We would solve the parking problem at no cost to the city or the residents. We would repair the utilities in the alley at no cost to the city. We would increase the alley to a usable 24-foot width, and we would create parking spaces that generate income and revenue to the city as well, for their allowing us to use the alley space in increasing our footprint of the parking at no cost to the city. And we would create roughly $700,000 a year in real estate income, which you hear all the time from every development that goes up, but that is what the number is just for general information. Without the alley, we'd be unable to get the additional parking, so we'd go back down to only what we need for the hotel, and we'd be able to still put the hotel on there, but it would be within a 2 or 3 story building above the parking. So the really big factor is if we are enabled to get this approved with the joint use agreement, we wind up with an additional, what is it, about 148, I think it is, parking spaces that would be available to the public and would be revenue sharing with the city. Basically, one of the things that we had discussed with some of you was there was concern about the look on 129th. So what we did is came back and revisited, made it more like a street scene at street level. Now realize this building does sit back when it gets above this level. And then we had all these hanging gardens that we put in here to try and soften it up. We put in a bunch of additional roofs and structures that make it look more like a residential or more in tune with a street scene than a parking garage, and we hid the parking garage aspect. If you go to the other side of the building on Boardwalk Place, you can see the difference when you do not dress up the parking garage. It looks like a parking garage. We weren't worried about it on the Boardwalk side because it's actually hidden by the Boardwalk buildings. They're the basic things. Now also, Commissioner Weinstein had said that one of her concerns was the 40 houses or so that are down the street here was traffic turning in that way. So one of the things we did is designed a left turn only when you come out of Fisherman's Alley, or that's actually, what is that, East Drive, I think, whatever it is. So in other words, the traffic would not be able to turn down into the residential neighborhood. So I think all these things combined, we tried to take into account what we at least got the consensus of what the wishes of the commission were, and tried to take into account what some of the citizens that we spoke to were. We really had a pretty successful public meeting, and one of the reasons that we were a little bit behind on going over reviewing the video with you all was there was some talk about trying to put together either some more advertising or another public meeting, perhaps here, that we were okay with. But I thought we were going to get a little more direction, for example, at this meeting, of what your wishes were in that account. So having said all that, I don't want to beat a dead horse because we've talked about a lot of these things in the past. And I can answer any questions you have, and hopefully this has come a little closer to what the commission would like to see.
I'm just curious, how many people were at the neighborhood meeting?
I think there were probably about 120, if I'm not mistaken. It seemed the count was about 120. It was pretty packed. You know, if we had to have another meeting, I would suggest that we had one here in the in City Hall, because then we can run an ad maybe in the newspaper and encourage people to come and voice their opinions. And you know, I think sometimes the mail-out's not always. You know, half the people don't get their mail-outs anyway by the time they just ignore what comes in the mail. So it may be an advertisement that went in the paper, in the beach paper, to encourage people to come if they had any opinion on it. I think that in talking to people around the village, I mean, the village is strongly in favor of this. They feel like, especially when you look at the fact that the parking that's on Pelican Lane, the 80 or 90 spaces that are there are going to go away. Those are scheduled to go away, actually, I think about 6 months ago, but they're still allowed there under the temporary permit they're there under. So once that parking goes away, it's going to impose further strain on, you know, people looking for places to park in the streets, and the traffic not being as controlled. So,
Mr. Bonziak, out of the 120 people that showed up for the neighborhood meeting, I'm sure they all voiced their opinions and how they felt about this. The changes that we're looking at today, are these reflected in the changes that some of the residents?
yeah, I did. I did try to reflect as best I could. There was one gentleman there that there's no way we could satisfy.
There always is.
And that's just unfortunate, but you're going to run into that. Generally speaking, people liked what we were doing. Generally speaking, there was a strong voice in a lot of cases of people thinking that the parking solution was a real positive part of this whole proposal. You know, we didn't get very much negative comment at all. As I say, there was one guy there that, and I understand his position, he lives right adjacent to the property on the, like right next to, across the alley, or across the street from Waltz. And he was pretty vocal. He just kept interrupting all the way through. You just couldn't get a word in edgewise with him. But that was really the main objection. But generally speaking, people liked what we were doing. They realized we were there with open ears and trying to do something that benefited the community. And I think the proposal we're making really does benefit the community in that, you know, we can build just the hotel and just the parking for the hotel, come within all the codes. Does that really help obtain any other objectives? I think the big positive to this is there's a financial objective that I think we help the city solve, and that is the improvements that are needed right now going out to the outflow. I think the fact that, there'll be some income generated to the city. I think the fact that we solve the parking problem, which you're not going to get too many opportunities to solve beyond this point. Where are you going to go? Nobody's going to sell you their land for a parking garage up and down the Pelican Lane. It's too expensive a waterfront. I think that we're trying to take a responsible look and give, as good of a presentation as we can of a workable solution for everybody. And I know it's hard sometimes to adjust to the idea of, some concessions on this stuff, but I think that we've tried to make it as much of a trade-off and as much of a positive thing for the city as a whole, not just the village.
Do you feel at this time that another meeting would be required, or were you pretty much satisfied with the one that you had?
I'm satisfied with the one we have, but I'm not opposed to another meeting. I think that you are the guys that have to be settled with, you're happy with, that everybody's had their chance to voice their opinions, and you've been able to hear both sides of the story. Look, I've been doing this for, I hate to say it, 50 years, but when I first came down here in '68, driving these beaches out of college, and when I first got my license, I've always heard both sides of the story, from the guys that wanted to take the bridges up and board everything up and not let anybody else come in, to the guys that want to build 30 stories. So, even the most adverse comment, at least, has to be heard. So I'm not objecting to another meeting, and I think that we're making a very positive contribution that I think will, would benefit the city.
What were the comments about the water feature? Were they?
Sorry, the what?
What were the comments about the water feature? Were they in favor of that?
Actually, a lot of people thought it was pretty neat, and once again, there only was the one guy that really hated it. And
He hated everything.
he hated everything, though, yeah. He didn't even like me.
Jack, what was said about or what was talked about with the traffic flow? I know you mentioned the thing on East End, with your little division.
Yeah, there was
Was there any
there was somebody
discussion
from
about a
back-
reverse traffic flow and stuff like that?
Well, there was a question about the traffic when it came out going back into your neighborhood back there, and that's why I think we came up with the idea of making a forced left turn. There was another comment that we had come up with that we talked about. One possibility is you come in off of 129th, and there's the drop-off for the hotel. But we have a road that goes straight on through that allows, if somebody were to pick up their car at the valet, they could drive on out here and go around Boardwalk and come back out. There was some comment that we could close this and stop the traffic from going through and going around. And that's a possibility. We'd pick up a few more parking spaces, and the only option then would be to go in and out on 129th at this end and or come down the alley this way, one or the other. So that's a viable possibility that we could take into account. You would still have an access at this point, but the inclination would probably be more to go back out to 129th or take the alley the rest of the way down to by where Delocia's is.
I don't know if it's proper for me to ask, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Yeah.
It covers quite a bit of area, and I know Waltz is right at the end of the street. Where does that put Walt? Is he going to
Waltz,
stay there?
we've been talking to Waltz, and that's not a dead issue with us or with them, I don't think. They have their own things they're going through right now and trying to make some decisions and see what they want to do independent of what we do. But we've had a lot of discussion with Sue and Walt, and we're open door with them. We made them an offer. If they decide to go, we said, the door's open. I think they need to be let to go through their own process of decision-making, and we'd be glad to bring them into the fold. And I actually left this corner so that if they did not come in, I could add some parking along here for them. If they did come in, we talked about putting something here that would go up about 3 stories, look out over the water, and be in addition to the place and open up onto the deck. So yeah, we can either plan Waltz in if they make the decision And if not, we can accommodate them, but we have talked to them.
With regards to Waltz, they have the 3 parking spaces down here at the end that butt out into Fisherman's Alley.
Yeah, yeah,
Because they've got the renters in the back building.
right.
So how is that being accommodated in there? Because I know sometimes they have big trucks and they are stuck out in that alley a little bit.
Yeah, well, what we did is we talked to them about, those spaces are right here.
Right.
They go in this way, and, they'll have better back out access, but they would still be able to maintain those spaces.
And then the other thing, you just said, which came up in bringing that building up would be an absolute shame. That building was built in 1931 and just a historic part of Johns Pass. It would be a shame to take it down.
Well, I understand that, and I do more historic buildings downtown in St. Pete and around than, I used to own the old YMCA. I restored the old Detroit Hotel when I owned it back then, when I had Janice Landing and all that. And I did the Outback Steakhouse in the old commercial building that's on 4th Street North. I'm doing 2 historic renovations right now. So, I do a lot of historic work, and I do understand what you're saying. Sue and Walt say that building's in such bad repair, and it's been added to and has.
I wouldn't doubt that from
Yeah,
1931, but it's still standing.
Yeah,
That-
yeah.
That was my only point.
The one thing that they've got to make the decision what they
Right.
want to do, and then, we can act with them or help them however we can and work it out.
Right.
I agree. It's kind of neat. It's too bad it's not in a location that's a little more accommodating,
So go for it.
So,
I got a bunch of questions. I was at the presentation, I thought it went very well. But, being able to think about it some more and reading this. First question is, you said it's going to create $700,000 in income. How much of that's going to come to the city, Jonathan?
Roughly, well, if you looked at your ad valorem revenue that would be generated at this project, probably a little over $70,000 annually
Okay,
from
because
tax.
right now it's showing a lot of fluff. I'm worried about what's coming to the city, not what he's paying in your.
Yeah, sure,
income
sure.
tax. So we're looking at 70,000 versus 700,000.
Right.
That was my first question. Couple other things I feel, have some heartburn with is the parking garage fees. I believe that it should be a flat fee, of something between the developer and the city works out. Because if we do a percentage or this or whatever, then that gets our finance people involved in looking at the books and doing this and doing that, and that just costs us more money and time and energy versus a flat fee. Bam, this is what we're going to pay you each year. Second, on that same subject, if, let's say you, for numbers purposes, you're charging $250 an hour, what I would like to also see in that same agreement is if they go from $250 an hour to $350 an hour, then how much they're paying the city also increases, to work something like that out. So I totally disagree with, paying a percentage.
Oh, it wouldn't be a percent. Let me explain that to you, just so you're up to speed.
Okay, I'm just going back from what I read,
Oh, yeah, no, I understand. But let me explain the percentage that we're talking about. The 2 ways we could run this are, we were not really crazy in favor of running the garage, so to speak. There are national companies that just pay you a flat fee every month. They mail you a check whether it's full or not full. And that was what we were talking about, trying to negotiate so that mutually with the city. You'll notice in the, or at least the city attorney and the city manager can tell you that in the agreement we forwarded, we didn't try to fill anything in as a specific because we're open. Anything that's reasonable.
I was just kind of looking, because in your further it says, minus any expenses or costs that we have, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So then our finance director's got to be sitting there going, okay, they took in this many, and it's just, to me, a bit of a headache.
To me,
versus-
County nightmare.
Yeah, and county nightmare, just like you just said, versus we say, hey, this is how much, pay each
Yeah,
quarter,
that-
whatever. And then if the parking garage raises its fees from $250 to $350, then that would be a percentage increase for us. So I just wanted to bring that up, how I.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that, and I don't think that the owners would have any problem with it, because basically, the way they have the agreement down there right now is they get a check every month, and then they negotiate that up front. Doesn't matter whether it's full or empty or there's red tide or whatever. to me, that's a pretty neat agreement, because you don't have any mess with the management, you don't have any mess with accounting. It's just, so we would have 2 or 3 options on ways to do this that we could discuss with the city openly.
Wait, before you go on from
Are
parking,
you jumping in again?
I'm gonna jump.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, with the parking, so right now, currently, he's making $30,000 a month. That's the number we're hearing on the street.
Pardon me?
$30,000 a month.
Yes.
In that parking lot.
Yeah.
And you're gonna double the parking. So, from what I've read, you were looking at 90,000, providing up to 90,000 the annual income to the city. I think that's just a drop in the bucket, because you're doubling the parking.
Well, but you
yet
gotta remember,
You're going at $360,000 a year now. So that to me is like a big red flag.
well, let me tell you one thing that you're forgetting, though. A lot of the parking we're going to put in there isn't parking that we can charge for. You can't be charging, you're going to have parking that's required by the city. So,
Not even half of what you're gonna end up getting.
pardon me?
That's not even half of $360,000 if there's doubling the parking, and you take just the double parking and have that for the hotel, and then the other 150 you're still sitting out there. That's gonna be 350 grand if you're still getting 30,000 a month. I mean,
No, I understand, but don't forget
Doing
2
the
things.
math.
One is that the expense of building the garage, which is many millions of dollars, is the burden of payment on that is on the landowners, not on the city. The city doesn't have to worry about the construction costs, the cost of the financing, anything like that. Taxes on the thing, we'll be paying taxes
still
on.
looking at, we are vacating city property, and it needs to be fair and equitable to the city for the residents to wanna give up city property for a private venture.
Yeah, and I think that the negotiations, the reason we left it blank in there is we weren't prepared to, we wanted to see where this went. And that's an open issue that the city manager, city
Yeah,
accountant
I'm out of parking now.
pull together.
Madam Mayor, if I may, to the commissioner's point, those are certain items that we will discuss as part of the negotiations, and those are elements that we would like to hear from the board, that you have some heartburn or some items that you think need to be addressed as part of the negotiation. So it's been abundantly clear to staff as well as the developer that the parking arrangement needs to be restructured in a way that we feel comfortable that it's a fair and equitable arrangement. And to the developer's point, to construct structured parking is about $20,000 a space. So if you do the rough math, it's about a $2.9 million investment if they were just to build the 148 spaces that we would have access to. However, we understand what the revenue element is to that. And so as part of the negotiations, this agreement is a shell to get kind of a temperature check from the board, and then from staff to come back to work out some of those nuances, and you will actually get to see the contract again before we would ever execute something. So this is the kind of conversation and the direction that we needed to move forward with certain elements, or what are pinch points for the board.
Well, one thing I do agree with Commissioner Douthert about is the fact that it needs to be a flat rate. We don't need to be involved in burdening the finance department with, how many spaces were in there, how many cars were in every month, and so make it a flat rate. But I understand there is a cost to building the parking lot in itself, but still, once that cost has been met and been paid, which isn't gonna take very long at $30,000 a month, there needs to be some equitable thing there for us, whether it's let them get the payback and then jump up, or, so, yes, restructure that part.
And we certainly agree.
My suggestion.
We certainly agree with the board's perspective on that, because a flat rate is so much easier for budgeting purposes and counting purposes. So certainly, our opinion of staff would be to structure an arrangement whereby it is effectively a flat rate. So that's the direction that we would like to go in, into negotiations with the developer, specific to that one element.
I think our approach of saying that we like the contract where you just get a check every month, that flat rate type thing might work better but I think that's something that once we decide whether the project's going forward, and we make a condition of that we work out an agreeable, arrangement on it.
Are you through, John?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm letting you guys jump in and out as you want.
He said he's got a long list, so we're,
I just have 2 more things.
Okay.
Number one, it was saying that on Fisherman's Alley, the maintenance and repairs of Fisherman Alley, after you're finished and report, is at the cost of the city.
No, we're not.
That's
In
what it
fact, if you
says.
look at the board, we're saying, yeah, I'm sorry if I missed that then, if it's in there. I put it on the board,
If it has to
actually.
be blacktopped or whatever, it comes at the cost of.
We're taking care of all the costs of upgrading and the outfall that needs to be
Down the road,
replaced.
10 years from now, whatever, okay. that's-
I'm sorry, I quite honestly, must have missed that in the contract when I looked through it, but.
Number two, Linda, impact fees. Where are we at on that, and what are we doing? And because it's going to affect that whole area, and how are we going to justify the cost if we're not charging impact fees?
Right, we don't charge impact fees except on county and state roadways. We don't have local roadway impacts. We're in the process of having the impact fee ordinance updated to allow for other types of impacts. There will be impacts assessed for county services, water and wastewater, and we do have stormwater impacts that will be paid. Since this is a PD, you don't necessarily have to have a set level of impacts. If you look at the neighborhood and you think that there are things within the neighborhood that are going to be impacted, and estimate what you think the cost is, you can negotiate directly with the developer on those costs, because that's part of adopting a PD.
And if that's the case, I think, we need to be talking to the business owners at John's Pass and saying, okay, how is this going to impact the area and that kind of stuff, and see what we come up with, as well as the residents who live behind there and the homes. I just don't want this to come down and then, 5 years from now, we've got the city, all this cost falls on the city that needs to be changed or upgraded due to this price. So that's why I'm talking about the impact fees and how we look at this whole area, and we have to look at the area as a whole, and I don't want to be hurting the businesses and the traffic and the infrastructure and all those things to basically to the residents back there, as well as to the businesses. So that's what I'm trying to work out in my head and see how we work that.
There are some issues that just naturally have to be addressed as part of the development agreement on a big project that's embedded in an urban area. Some of that is going to be access, the manner in which the construction is conducted.
Staging was a question for me
Exactly.
because that hadn't been addressed.
Oh,
And
not
it
at
was
this-
asked earlier.
Right, that hasn't been at this point, but the staff hasn't come back with a list of conditions
Okay.
or expectations for the development yet. And we'll have to be really careful about, for instance, if Walt does stay and they stay in operation, that there's safe ways of access and just getting around and into the building. But for that whole area wherever there's pedestrian access, it's going to have to be protected access. So, and then in regards to impacts on the street, if the construction equipment causes any kind of damage to other streets anywhere along the way in there, those would have to be repaired just as a matter of normal process. Afterwards, we'd have to make sure that that is all listed in the development agreement as well.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, to the point of the commissioner with respect to impact fees, in this particular arrangement with the PD, you have the ability, like the department director said, to negotiate for improvements to any infrastructure that would be impacted associated with this development, as long as it's reasonable in nature. So we would utilize the same rational nexus to get to that point. So if we look at the intersection of Pelican and 129th, or even the intersection of 129th and Village, and we needed to make some intersections improvements, and we believe that that development will have some impact on that, those are some things that we can negotiate as part of the PD. So there are certain elements that we have in this arrangement that traditionally with just a cut and dry impact fee situation, you would get the monies associated with it, but you would not necessarily get the opportunity to pinpoint exactly some things that you would want to address. So to the earlier question with regards to having another community meeting, I think there is a value to that, especially hearing from businesses and residents again in that area, and then giving staff the opportunity to share with the public what the joint use agreement looks like, because invariably that's going to be the calls that you get from your constituents as to what is the impact and what is this going to be. And staff can dig into what the arrangement looks like and explain some of the improvements that would have to be made if the city doesn't enter in any type of an agreement. So certainly I think there would be some value to host another community meeting to speak to some of the items and get some additional feedback before we move forward. And plus, obviously this needs to go to the Planning and Zoning Board, but we wanted to get the board's opinion on some elements to give the Planning and Zoning Board a little insight of the direction that the board is going on this particular matter.
I think that, you know, if we fix some of the questions that were answered here, or asked here today, that we should, you know, send it to the Planning and Zoning Board, in my opinion. That's all I have.
Well,
Okay.
Respond to one of your comments was that I understand exactly where you're coming from, and I think that
The
a lot of
microphone?
these points we need.
The microphone, Jack, nobody can hear you.
I understand your point about, you know, all these things are things that we've been really not pushing this thing to go, like we had to have you hear it right away, and we had to get to the planning board right away. So I think just our whole tenor on trying to get this resolved is we'd like to come up with an agreement that, and an approval that everybody here is comfortable with. Because this is the impact of this project, positive impact, especially there are a lot of financial impacts. And I think things like TIF fees mainly go to the county. You get a very, I don't even know if you get anything out of those. No. Nothing at all. I mean, you know, so a major portion of the impact fees don't even come city-wise to the revenue side. But I think that I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that with another public meeting and taking all the input we get from you guys, you know, I think we can, you know, continue to work this thing through. This by no means is here's our agreement and this is the way we want to do it. We're open and trying to negotiate something that everybody's comfortable with. So the input's positive.
In all that, I think one of the main things, you're gonna have to look at 129th and Village, and you're gonna have to look at Pelican Lane in that, because we've got right now like a little left-right jog going on there into the hotel itself, which is gonna be new and strange to a lot of people. So, and that all depends on if you're gonna funnel traffic through on Pelican, or if you're gonna funnel them down 129th before they know what's going on. So, just a question.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
I'm real anxious to improve that site where the proposed resort will be. And I appreciate your new third set of designs, and they look much improved from the old ones. But I'm sure that all of us know that the situation as it stands now has to be, you know, it's got to be changed, because for the past 10 years, the owners of the site, who are partners in to develop it now, have let those lots go from neglected to blighted. I mean, I don't know how they can even build on it, because there's so many bad, horrible holes, the rutted dirt lots and the trash overflowing and the overgrown weeds and all those other offenses. But when those lots were turned into private paid lots at $5 an hour, you know, several years ago, still nothing was done to make the lots legal to conform to codes for parking lots. So city officials at the time didn't do anything, and so I'm real anxious to get this project underway. But I do have some real concerns with any public-private proposed agreement. I just can't get my arms around it, really, because I've always been of the thought, and I've heard so many comments, I guess, that private businesses, and we all know this, and it's a wonderful thing. We live in America. They're here to make money, and the city hall is in business to provide services to our citizens, not to be in joint agreements with developers. That's always been my feeling. I believe the city has to control its own future and not enter into any agreement where we can't control it. That's really my thought. I think that the city needs to have our legal counsel develop perhaps an agreement and mesh it with the to establish the city's needs and requirements and mesh it with the agreement. So I'm not in favor of the agreement as it stands. But my thoughts, and I have given this some thought since I did not go to that September 6th meeting, but to move forward, they're a little bit different, but some of them are in line with some of the other commissioners said. What I'd like to see with that parking, I'd like to see the city get parking places. I'd like to see the development deed or give parking places to the city on the ground floor of that resort, and those spaces to match if there's 50 spots for each of the floors above, or 75, that be mirrored on the ground floor, and that the development interests give that property to the city. Let the city establish, okay, and put in our own meters, and that will be consistent, and then our charges could be consistent, okay, with what we're currently charging throughout the city, okay? We don't have to worry about $5 an hour, a flat fee, or anything. I think that I would certainly consider something like that. I want the developer to improve the neighborhood. I know that there can't be impact fees, but I know that the construction is going to impact the streets. The roads are, 129th and Pelican Lane and East End. I've lived there for 40 years. They're decrepit. They're dilapidated. They've had some kind of filler, put on them throughout the years, but they're falling apart. Everybody says they're good roads in the city. I remember, I think it was Steve Tart said that, but walk on them sometimes. They're not. But then I was thinking too, Jack, that the development, since it does appear to be, and you've used the word that upscale development, okay, and it does look that way. But since it is to be upscale, I was thinking the improvements in the neighborhood, for instance, that the entry to the resort is more impressive than going into, for instance, Pelican Lane, which is a mess. We've talked about it for a long time. Would the developer have any appetite in making improvements to Pelican Lane? Or a certain amount, or think about it, okay? Because, I've looked at, what you're presenting, and I'm thinking of, paving, sidewalks, landscaping, something, okay? To make it more palatable for the travelers to come into the upscale hotel. I know you think they might come at 129th, but Pelican's right there in their front door, okay? And then the other item was the, perhaps, since we can't do anything with impact fees, that the developer consider paving 129th. You can ask.
Paving 120, yeah. Well, let me say this. Understanding what Commissioner Dewart had mentioned, you're going to have damage during construction.
Correct.
I don't care what you do on these streets. And typically, the developer always has to put up a bond to repair any damage out there. So I think as to the streets around the development, you got to stand responsible for those, because you're going to have trucks running in and out. You're going to be, staging. And the staging end of it, we know that the only way we're going to be able to build this is with a tower crane in the middle of the site that has reach all the way around. So we're not trying to park in the streets all the time with cranes, and unless it's a small crane dropping something off. But I think that the developer really has to stand responsible for any damage to the streets. And the condition of those streets, I agree with you, they're not going to be just patched. They're going to have to be at one stage just repaved. Pelican Lane, I would only disagree with you on this basis. I've heard some great ideas about Pelican Lane that the city's even thought remotely about, like trying to do a boardwalk along the water and connect it, all the way through. I think that we can only go to the limit of Pelican Lane's privately owned on both sides, and those guys need to take some responsibility, as we would take responsibility for our site. If it was something where we could establish something that was a connection between us and say a boardwalk along the water along there, I think if you start to really think comprehensively, you can come up with something that really makes Pelican Lane more than just a place where people walk at night. I spend a lot of nights out here, so we're doing Madeira Bay. We did the Madeira Bay townhouses. Sam Lewis and I are 40 years. We've been partners and friends in a lot of things, and I spend a lot of time out here. And I walk down Pelican Lane many a nights when we're going down to get something to eat, or I leave the site. And it's not that heavily used, but the street is dilapidated. And once that parking goes away from there, people are going to start looking at what they have to do with those lots. And it might be better if we had a comprehensive plan that tied all this stuff together and maybe tied some kind of a walkway through there, or something that made it, worthwhile. I just don't know that we would want to commit to fixing Pelican Lane for all the guys that aren't contributing on Village Drive and the people that own those expensive waterfront properties in there. It's not like we're trying to help the city out. We're trying to help them out, and that's all going to be torn down relatively quick. I mean, I think there are a lot of give and take things. I'm not saying we unequivocally wouldn't do anything, but I think that there's got to be a limit to where we try to make things really right with this development. But I do agree with you that we should be responsible for coming up with a really nice plan for doing all the peripheral streets to our property there. And we talked about, the trying to avoid people turning down your direction down to your residential neighborhood. I think a waterside walkway down Pelican Lane on the water side would be a great thought process, or something that dresses up Pelican Lane. But I think everybody's going to kind of participate, because once they pull that parking out of there, when those permits expire, they're going to be faced with decision. What do they do? And I can guarantee you 3/4 of those guys are going to sell, because that property's been sitting there. Once you take their only source of income away from them, from that temporary parking when the season comes and goes, they're gonna have to own up to owning expensive property that nobody's wanted to develop for the 20 years that I've been looking at it out there.
Because of the zoning, isn't it? But maybe because you all are not absentee people, okay?
Yeah.
You're in the neighborhood, the Giagostino's and you. Maybe there could be some conversations between those property owners.
I think that's an awesome idea.
I remember years ago, I don't know who was on the commission then, but I remember Pat Johnson and I worked like the devil to try and get Pelican Lane cleaned up in any way we could, okay?
I mean, I think that we'd be open to
the-
joining with those owners and with the city,
Yeah,
and
maybe-
trying to negotiate something that makes it a more comprehensive solution. It's unfortunate that right now you look at the back of all those stores.
Correct.
They're just terrible. And if there was some way of making that whole thing work much better, I mean, we'd love to, be a part of, our part of the contribution.
Right, well, those are my thoughts, but I'm not keen at all on the joint agreement where the city is dependent on a figure from somewhere. I want those parking
If you go with a
places.
flat rate, you're right.
Pardon?
If you go with a flat rate, just.
No,
here it is.
I think that I'd certainly think about it, but I guess because I thought of the idea of giving the city those spaces and let the city be responsible for putting the meters in. It's just clear cut, and the city keeps control of what they're supposed to have control of. They're not in a private-public agreement, okay, that's it for me.
Well, I do recommend that we have a second neighborhood meeting.
Yep.
Kind of like Debbie's idea. That was one of the questions I was going to ask, is the 300 parking spots, about half were for the hotel and half were for the city. So I was going to ask, are there going to be designated spots, or just, first come, first serve?
Well, I mean, the only reason we had suggested maybe going to if whatever goes in that the city get a certain piece of, is that's a net. You don't have anything for maintenance, or you don't have operational things. Oh, the red tide came and we didn't get anything this month. That's just a flat fee. It doesn't matter what happens. To me, I like that, just as a business person, I like that better, because I know parking lots have management difficulties and headaches, and somebody's got to keep track of the money, and somebody's got to do the accounting. And that's a big expense. And if you have a bad couple weeks or a couple months like we've had out here, it's, you kind of wish that you had a flat rate coming in. And I know that the guys that own it now, it's been really nice getting that check every month from a national company that is, renegotiates their lease every 5 years or whatever. But, I mean, if the city and the commission decides they want to go to some different arrangement, this is the time period while we're going through this process to bring all this up and see what the commission as a whole wants to do and what we can do and how it affects the surrounding areas also and people. We're open. We by no means wrote that agreement, and I apologize that I didn't see the thing about some of that stuff in there about the impact fees, but there really aren't any impact fees in the city, so to speak, of their own. Most of them are county generated. But we're trying to just get the start down the path on this and negotiate these things as we go along and try to come up with something that works for everybody. I mean, I think there's a lot of benefit in this for the city. I think the work and the improvements that we've just proposed right off the bat, plus the streets around that, we're going to have to restore whatever we have out there around the building, around the site. Whether it's half ours or entirely ours. You can't run trucks up and down that for a year and then say, well, now the city's got to fix the streets. That's just not reasonable.
I know Gulf Lane is truly a mess behind that Barefoot Beach. It is just,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, you have to skip over the
Yeah.
holes, so.
No, I understand. And those alleys are what the city lets go. What are you going to pave, the streets first or the alleys? Everybody lets the alleys go first, and that's not just Madeira Beach, it's all the jurisdictions.
But remember all the residents that live on Gulf Lane, it is not an alley.
I know that. Yeah. Believe me, I've
Well, you're right.
been subjected to some criticism over that, and I
It's a lane.
had to respond to. I couldn't let it go unresponded, so I did respond to that from what.
I had two things. Number one, on the impact fees, the reason I brought that up is I've been asking about impact fees since I've been on this commission, and we're moving very slowly on it as a city. What we can do, what we can't do. That's number one. And number two, in answer to what Debbie was saying, Debbie, if we have X amount of spots in there, then we got to buy meters, then we got to maintain it, then we got to stripe it, then we have to have somebody go in and collect the meters, then we got to go in and have somebody do parking. So we have cost versus a flat fee. And I'm not saying what that fee should be or shouldn't be. I'm not saying that at this point. I think that's up to the city to negotiate. But then it takes all that extra cost and work and paperwork and, like Nancy said, the accounting nightmare out of it and just going with a flat fee. And then, like I say, they started at $250, and then 2 years from now they decided to raise it to $450, that we would get an increase, accordingly. So that's why I kind of said the flat fee.
Yeah, and
we have no cost involved.
Right, but I guess I'm considering it from the standpoint of control and having, this is our own little destiny. Yeah, we can take control of it, I guess.
Well, you can always, in agreement, have them put something into the fact of any changes, anything done to Fisherman's Alley is in conjunction with the city, and the city has a say in what, if they make any changes that deviates from the plan. There's something there that would hold them to the fire that way.
We're not proposing to take over Fisherman's Alley. I mean, that still is an alley. That's the whole reason it's a joint use agreement, not a, I mean, we're saying that's still the alley. We're just improving it and improving. The main thing is that outfall, quite honestly. That's a major thing that you're going to have to deal with sooner or later.
Well, maybe the next step really is not is to have our land use attorney, okay, prepare a separate, as I said when I was making my comments before, prepare a separate agreement or what the city, what the city wants, okay, and try to mesh it in then with, I wouldn't be prepared at all to do to agree to the joint use, for instance, and I don't think anybody's asking me to agree to a joint use today without our land use attorney really digging into it, okay? I guess that's where the next step certainly needs to be. I don't think that consensus is even today, I don't think we even want, my way of thinking, we didn't even really want a consensus as to a land use agreement. It was more of a presentation.
The consensus, Madam Mayor, that we're looking from the board is that there is an appetite for us to move forward with structuring a joint use agreement that is mutually beneficial to both parties, and that the board is in agreement with the project moving forward with an additional community meeting, with making the corrections and modifications to the facade and those other things, and then continuing on through the process, planning and zoning board, and then ultimately giving the board another opportunity to see what the joint use agreement looks like after our land use attorney looks at it. So basically, we're seeking direction from the board. Is it okay for us to proceed? And are you not necessarily in love with the agreement that's before, but are you willing to consider a joint use agreement whereby it speaks to some of the items that were articulated at today's meeting, and then having another opportunity to look at what the arrangement consists of, and then putting a number and a value to some of the other things that were discussed as part of the situation. So conceptually, what we're looking for is direction from the board as how you would, for us to proceed.
I believe that conceptually.
I agree.
We agree. We agree to go forward and see what you come back with, and
Yep.
I'd request then that what we try to do is maybe get first hold another public hearing, or do you think we ought to make that part of the planning board meeting, or how do you think we should do that?
I would want a separate one.
All right, well, if you would,
At City Hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do it here.
Uh-huh.
well, if-
We have the recording
and do it right here.
and audio, we
Yeah,
have,
yeah. I mean, I think that'd be appropriate if we go ahead and set one in 2 weeks or so, so then we can, after that, go to the planning board. And to answer your question about the agreement, we realized that we had forwarded to the city's, I think the city's land attorney has this. This wasn't intended to be a final format. This was intended to be the start of somebody generating something that when we had spoken to Ralph about this originally, he said, somebody's got to generate something that somebody starts working back and forth with, and that's what we intended to do.
Is it normally the position that the developer then presents an agreement to the board or to the local governing authority, or would it be normally the board, the board's initiating that?
Typically, most of the time, unless it's something that's a standard format, like some of the development agreements that are out there, in most of the cases that I've done in this city, I've developed the first, script of the development agreements and the first round of any agreements that we've done. I think the cities prefer that because they'd rather see something that somebody else has gone to the expense of putting their thoughts on paper, and then the city attorney being able to critique it and present it to the board and, work the board's, wishes into it, desires into it. So this is sort of an unusual thing. So we just did it to accommodate starting the ball rolling forward and letting the city's land use attorney get a look at it and come back with comments generated by the board and generated by the staff. So we go to, we get it back and then we generate, our responses to it. So I think the intention was to generate something that started the ball rolling. And
Does it normally happen, Jack, also that if the consensus of the board is to move forward, then really what you're saying, then the next step, it can go to the planning board, and I don't.
Yes.
Yeah,
Now, usually
see, I don't
that's
think
the next
that
step
should
is-
happen next. I mean,
Well, we're inserting the public meeting as an additional public meeting. And so I think that that's the right way to do it, is have a public meeting, get to the board right behind that. Then you get your staff and your professional comments in place and your planning board's comments. Then that comes back to you. So I would say, yeah, if we can set up a public hearing in 2 weeks or whatever, or 2-3 weeks, we'll get with staff on trying to set that up. And then, if you wish, we'll come back before you. And we'll go, to the planning board, and then we'll be sent back to you. And hopefully by that time, a lot of these details can be worked out.
I appreciate all the work that you've put into this, Ms. Bajak. I know you're trying to work with us as best you can, and there is a lot of compromising, and you are willing to give too. So I do appreciate what you're doing.
No, thank you. I appreciate the recognition. I really, it's kind of funny. I'm really thinking the overall picture. I know some of you at first were really adverse to this, but I really appreciate that we have had a lot of conversation back and forth, and that's the way to kind of try to work your way through these things and see whether it's a workable thing for everybody involved. But I do appreciate your coming back to us with this.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
We all
Thank
want
you.
what's best
Thank
for our
you.
city. We're not voting. The floor is now open for public comment on this item. floor is closed. The next item is City Hall Community Development and Building Department proposed city renovations. Director Portel.
Good afternoon again. I'm trying to log in so that we can put something up there for the public to see, but I know that you've seen in your packet, I think there was a small rendering. What we're coming to you to talk about today for the first time publicly is the proposal that the staff is making to move forward with renovations to the City Hall by adding a first floor on the ground underneath the office section of the existing City Hall. The space there is high enough to accommodate another floor. The current building is built well above the design flood elevation requirements, and so there's adequate room in there even to put windows that would be above flood stage. What's being proposed is consistent with the existing criteria for development on the ground in A zones, and will also be consistent with the changes that are coming down the pike from FEMA, which are going to require us to look at this site as a coastal A. And so what we would be proposing is that all the new walls would be filled, stem cells will, the cells will be all filled in, and that we would also have engineering appropriate to accommodate any wave action that may come off the bay, and that all windows and doors would be flood-proofed. All of the funding for this proposed project would come from the building fund. That fund can only be used for projects that further the code enforcement and building codes and standards operations of the city. And so none of what is proposed here would come from the general fund. We estimated that the project would come in somewhere between $350 and $375. It would provide additional space that's actually pretty seriously needed. The existing office space was built to accommodate the city and the size it was at the time the building was put up, and it doesn't provide us with either the security or the confidentiality that certain portions of our work is supposed to provide, and the records management and control. Also, we have a problem already with there not being enough meeting space. I've had to hold meetings all over the place in hallways and outside because, and I think we've all run into that because we just have meetings going on in all departments at the same time. So this would provide us with the opportunity to get some of the functions that are currently out in the open into enclosed offices, provide better customer care in the lobby area, and in the intake of the permits would give us an opportunity to process those better, more smoothly. And also, as I said, there are some aspects of what we do, especially as it relates to FEMA contracts and any kind of funds that address housing issues, all have to be handled in confidentiality, and we have a real problem with that now because our files are all open to the same area that we bring the public in all the time. And we've had trouble even maintaining security on files, things that seem to leave without our knowledge, and we need to be really careful about that.
How much is, excuse me, how much is in the reserve right now in the building fund?
Building fund or?
In the building?
I believe the building fund has about $150,000 right now.
Right, we would not proceed until additional funding came in. There are some projects coming in, and their project fees are significantly higher than, combined with what we have now, would be higher than what was required for the project. We would not proceed without that.
So you're not going to proceed until
The
you
money's
have
there.
all of that intact?
Correct.
So what happens if it goes over 375 at that point? Because if you're saying 375 today and you're going to wait another year or two before you get the other $200,000 or whatever, then where
We
the cost is going to just keep
Right.
going up every year. We know that.
Yes, that, of course. And the reason that we're bringing to you right now is because we have several projects in-house that we're currently reviewing that would bring enough money in on their permits within the next month or so.
Aren't the plans subject to, what's the word I'm looking for?
FEMA?
No, just subject to records requests, that's the word I wanted.
Yes, these plans,
Yes.
yes. And the things that I'm talking about are, for instance, when we're dealing with people's, if we have any projects that involve funding that comes from DCF or HUD, some portions of the information that we have on our clients, for instance, the housing that we build through FEMA for individual homes, some portions of those are actually confidential records. We're not supposed to be putting those out. And I've also gotten quite a bit of interaction with FEMA lately as it regards to just statistics that pertain to our CRS, like the number of homes or how many people or which homes are insured, that we're not allowed to give out to the public. It has to only come from FEMA. They'll give me the numbers, but we can only use the sifted down numbers. So sometimes we have stuff in-house that's actually federally protected information.
All right, I was assuming everything was subject to
No.
records requests. And how many square feet is that space?
The space below City Hall is approximately 5,200 square feet. And if you subtract the service area where the dumpster's at and the elevator area, we're looking to rebuild about 4,900 square feet, the entire width and length of City Hall.
That wing of City Hall, right?
Okay, thank you.
Linda, you and I have had some conversations on this, and I'm still a little uneasy about it, to be honest with you. Because the way I look at it, when we built City Hall, we had to build it up. And even though you said that it'd be in a zone differently, I'm just not comfortable because we're still in a flood zone. And if anything should happen, we'll lose the whole bottom portion of City Hall.
Right, those are always good concerns. I'll point you to looking at things like the CVS that was approved, and Marriott, and the Publix. All of those things are in the floodplains, but they're on the ground. And the reason you can do that is there's special kinds of construction you can put into those projects that keeps them more stable. The wave action doesn't affect their foundations. And you have to fill all the cells in the concrete block instead of just filling them every few inches to make sure that the walls are more sturdy. Then also each project has to have a flood-proofing system that's put in place in the event that you know the storm or floods are coming. In preparation for those, all of these buildings that I've just mentioned have a flood-proofing system in place to keep the water out. Those are all things we would have to do downstairs. It is built up higher than required on this top floor, and there are standards that FEMA and the Florida Building Code have in place to make sure that it would be safe in the event of a storm and would not allow water in.
Again, too, with anything like that occurring, we'd be right back where we started from, like with the old City Hall, with all the mold. It would form down there because of the moisture.
Well, we would not get water into the building. They have to be built in a manner that keeps the water out, for sure. And actually, the existing City Hall would be better protected if that's filled in on the bottom. As it is right now, we have salt water air that works underneath the building, and all of that would be sealed in. So it would give additional life to the existing building, along with, as I said, it would have to be very carefully constructed to make sure that it kept water out.
Okay, at this time, too, all the air conditioning, the plumbing, everything is right underneath, and it's...
No, everything has to be up.
Okay.
And it would still have to be up. Everything will have to be above the base flood elevation requirements, that +2.
Okay, well, the City Hall, the way it stands right now, if you go down underneath there, isn't there pipes for the air conditioning, plumbing and stuff like that that's out there?
All the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing below City, everything's raised above the BFE within the building. There is plumbing drain lines that do go down to the existing along with the storm drains from the roofs. Those will have isolation valves in those, and those will be part of the precautions for shutdown in case of emergency.
Right, that's required by FEMA, that you have a way to shut all of that off.
Okay, but you said that the height down there, I was getting at the height. Because
Yes.
if you have that down there and you have to put like a facade ceiling in,
Right.
what do you do with all that?
All of that will, those lines will still be there. There's so much height down there. As a matter of fact, the top of this floor is built at 16 when it really only had to be at 12. So there's a whole lot of space there that would allow you to drop a ceiling underneath all of that plumbing.
The height downstairs below the City Hall is 9.5 feet, and when the slab goes in, we'll have 9.5 feet from slab to the ceiling, and we'll have 4 feet of space to put all our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing in, and we're projecting the ceiling height to be 8 foot. So we'll have 1.5 feet above the ceiling, but all our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing per FEMA will be in that 4 foot space from the floor down. So that's space all the way across.
It will definitely meet all of the FEMA requirements. Frank would be the project manager on that. Nobody's going to build anything that doesn't meet the building code. He's very familiar with FEMA, but then so am I. I'm the certified floodplain manager, so I'll have to approve and stamp all the plans, all aspects of the plans.
Have you anticipated what the overhead would be once it's built out, utilities, extra supplies, things like that?
No, we did not. We were going to split the utilities. I talked to Walt, and we decided when we were planning this out to split the utilities, the electrical, plumbing, and the resources going through there. We decided to split those, so whatever comes in downstairs would be split between planning and building, 50-50. But as far as an actual expense, no.
Even though the funds are coming out of the building department, is this something that still has to be bidded out?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Couple questions. Number one, is this based on the present map plan for flood area or the new one that's going to go in next August?
The new one. Our elevation here is not changing, but that new coastal A designation will require different building methods.
So if we don't do it before next August, then we're looking at it, we have to do it completely different, right?
No, we're doing it completely different anyway.
Okay.
That's what we're saying. We're doing the higher standard in all the development to make sure that it will meet those new standards.
Second question is, why aren't we taking this stuff over here and moving you guys over there and just building that out down there for the recreations, the senior activities, that type of thing? Because then if it floods, if for some reason if it does flood, we're not losing your maps and all the paperwork that you said have to be secured.
Well, largely because of funding. If you move the building and planning staff over to this floor on top and you rework this, we could pay for all of the rework out of the building fund, but anything that you did underneath that building would have to be paid out of general fund for recreation. So we really haven't planned out providing space or the cost of providing space to another department because it has to relate directly to the implementation of building code.
Last question, and I thought about this last time after I kind of talked to you guys. The building fund money's got to be used for the building fund, correct? Nothing else?
Correct.
Why is the city not charging the building people rent for the space they're using right now?
Theoretically, you could do it, but it would be a kind of convoluted processes that we would break it down per square footage, per office cubicle, and those types of things. However, with the renovations, one of the things that, and I would have to get legal to opine on this, is that conceptually, you can have a situation whereby you can effectively lease or sell that bottom level of City Hall for X for the purposes of them occupying that space, and then they go in there and they would make the improvements, etc. There are some ways to do it. However, we thought the simplest, easiest, and cleanest way to do it is the way that we are bringing it forward to the board for consideration, because if they go in there and they make the renovations and in 5 years a board of commissioners decides to say, and a city manager decides to say that we would like to have this space occupied for recreational programming or another department, etc., you would then pay the depreciated value of that particular space as opposed to what the actual capital cost would be today. And so for us to be able to, carve out square footage and charge them for the space, it would be very convoluted, and you have to really be careful of how you utilize building funds. And if you get into some type of nebulous formula, somebody can argue and say, well, you're going to pay for a copy machine anyways. Why would you charge Frank 30% of the use of the copier when he's using 10%, or he's using, X amount of square footage? It just complicates things a little bit more. So we thought that this would be a simple, clean way. If there's any increase in operating cost or maintenance costs or those types of things, those costs would be borne by the building fund. In addition to, we would not bring this project forward, and it will not come to fruition unless the building fund can sustain the construction costs and the operating costs associated with it. There is to be no impact to the general fund associated with this project. So no general revenue or no tax dollars would be utilized for the purposes of this improvement.
Frank, we'd have to charge you more than 30% for the copier. I'm sorry.
Is there an administrative fee to the building fund? Well, to an administrative fee to the general fund from the building fund?
The building
Yep.
fund does get there is a general fee that they have to pay back.
Administrative fee?
Yeah.
Okay, there is one. Do you know off the top of your head what that is? No, don't go to that extent. I can look it up myself. That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Does the $375,000 include office furniture and
Yes.
that can come out of the building fund then?
That just doesn't
Yes.
seem possible. Number one, you're building it to a higher standard, and
Well,
with all the flood stuff and the FEMA stuff, and I've never seen a project go on budget myself, ever. So that's why I think 375 is just a lowball number on the whole project.
well, consider that, for one thing, that the structure is already there, so we're not having to build the columns, or we're not having to dig down a lot of the.
That's true.
Those are deep columns, and that's a big part of the cost on any new construction.
And do you
Yes,
know how many
there's-
square feet it is, those 3 rooms over there are in total?
The total there, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you that offhand. We did look at the gym as far as the space in the gym, but between both Linda and our personnel, there wasn't enough space per person to take the gym.
Okay, so where do we stand? What is it you actually want?
We want the board to, with enthusiasm, say that they support us moving forward with the project, a competitive solicitation, with the understanding that the costs associated with this project will be borne by the building fund, and then we will bring it back to you incrementally as we get, the design, architecture, all those different things, so you can get a better understanding of how it will function, but just for us to move forward with the project.
I would like to see a line item of the whole project prior to going out and actually doing something other than just having it drawn up. I'd like, because I'm just not real comfortable with that yet, with the 375.
We can provide a breakdown of the anticipated cost to the board in a memorandum. We can get that out to you. That shouldn't be
Okay, thank you.
difficult for us to do.
Yeah,
And
I
Director
think-
Pierce, if you can provide the number to the city clerk or announce it publicly, as far as what that charge is.
The charge that the building fund pays back to the general fund is $63,200.
So 63,200 is the administrative or contra charge, and that accounts for admin, HR, finance, all the other services that are provided to support the building fund.
Right.
And that's consistent with other enterprise fund operations. You do have a contra or administrative charge that you do charge for enterprise funds to provide those other services.
And I
I
would
think
also
that
like
is a
to-
very convoluted formula to get to administrative fund. I've seen so many, I've had them try to break it down and nobody can break that down.
I'd like to-
That's just saying over the years
Right.
I've seen it.
I would like to see anticipated maintenance costs of the downstairs of the floor down there. Just anticipate, just an estimate, so that we will know that that maintenance, that future maintenance, 50% of it is going to be paid by the building department.
What
Is
we
that
will
right?
do is, we will provide a memorandum that speaks to the concerns of the board, and then we will also bring back at a workshop, the request for proposals. So effectively, you'll get the memorandum that speaks to the areas of concerns that the board articulated. Then you'll have an opportunity to see the bid documents and what the anticipated costs and what the fixtures and the finishes will be. And then we can move forward in that space. You'll have all the information, and you'll feel more comfortable with making a decision. But conceptually, before there was a lot of staff time and effort that went into creating the bid doc and those types of things. We wanted to see if the board was in favor of us moving forward with the project.
And they would call it the city aquarium. Since it will be the design of an aquarium, so that no water can penetrate through, right?
Correct.
Well, I will enthusiastically look forward to seeing those documents.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I like
Thank you.
that.
All right.
So we are all okay with that. All right.
All right.
So we will now open the floor for public comment on this item. Floor is now closed, and the next item is the City of Madeira Beach website updates.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. Lacey LaFave, Executive Assistant to the City Manager. City Manager Jonathan Evans has directed staff to do a complete redesign of the city website. And the city has retained network people in Media Garage to assist with completing this project. After an extensive review of the current site, our team developed a project plan to construct our new city website. Here today, we have representatives from Network People and Media Garage, Hunt Brand, and Court Bishop, and they're going to get into further details regarding the project.
Madam Mayor and the Commissioners, appreciate you taking the time for us to give you an update. What we wanted to do is quickly give you a status on the project. We had a pretty intensive briefing when we kicked it off several months ago, and we just wanted to give you all an update on where we are. A lot of good work has been done by the team.
Commissioner, just so you know, it is on the screen behind you.
And we're looking at the project objectives page, which I think is in the handout that you have as well. And so when we first approached you, these were the three key items that we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to do the strong branding of the city, rapid access to information, and allow each department to be sort of unique within the website so that when people come to the site, they know what department they're in, but they always know they're part of the city. So those were the three overriding objectives, and there was a lot of work that we'll be sharing with you, how we came about getting the details on that. Here's the status of the current project. We have conducted briefings with each department head to make sure that everybody understood what the objectives were, and I want to reiterate that this is the first of many updates to the site that will happen. It's a living, breathing site. It's not a one and done sort of thing. And so the goal of this is to put a foundation in that is very flexible, easy to update, staff is trained, every department can make their own updates or quickly get updates made. That was one of the complaints we heard a lot from staff before. And so what we're putting is the foundation for that. So at this point, from a project point of view, and Court is going to give us some more color behind all the different work that has been done in the research with staff and the teams. 50% of the old site's content have been updated and put onto the new, and we're continuing that through early November. You'll see here there's over 1,300 files have been brought up. That includes a lot of the agendas and items like that. And then the last bullet there, OpenGov and iCompass, that actually wasn't in scope when we started, but the department heads, the clerk and the director of finance, they're making headway on those efforts, and they're going to be actually part of the launch, which is really good news because that's one of the key objectives, is to be able to integrate more with internal systems so that they're easily accessible to the public. Now we have a Gantt chart there, basically where we are. The current load has started back in September and still going on. The design phase had a lot of research done. We talked to the public, as you know, and again, we'll go through some of that. And at this point, we are finishing up conversion of all the content, and we're working on the navigation, which is a key part of what makes a website easy and good to use and fresh, is making it easy to find things and logically able to navigate to where you want to go. And part of that is that Court has done extensive research on what pages people were going to, what other sites, and how they set up their navigation. And so that's part of where we are right now. So go ahead and move it up, please. And so this is the next step. We're going to complete the finish of the files, get some branding for each department. We're going to get OpenGov and iCompass integrated so that you can get to those internal systems for the public. And then we'll finalize the navigation and have a lot of testing going on to make sure that the department heads are happy and the staff is happy with it. And then once that is done, we'll train everybody on how to use it. And at that point, we'll launch the site at the end of November. So before we dive into some of the details of the history, is there any questions on that from the commission or the mayor? Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Court to give some data on any questions you have, but this is what we've done so far on the research. The current website audit, Kurt did a study of the current site. We got some tools that we really dove into each page. We did a check on to where people were searching and where they were landing, and we did a deep dive on that. We also looked at competitive sites and sites that we thought were really beautiful and well done. And that's a very standard technique in web design, is you find out who's doing it well and do it better. And so we did a lot of that. We did an online public survey that Court and her team put together with the staff. And we also did some analytics and Facebook ads for that survey. Another key part about this was the design options, which is the color palette and the font. That's a pretty key aspect of what gives us the branding we're looking for. And the home page and navigation is a key landing. That's where everybody's going to end up. There was also a lot of time spent on the logo design because we don't want to change the logo too much, but we do want to give it a more modern look. So there was a lot of work done by the team and staff on that. And then the media planning was set up of how we're going to bring the files in and how we're going to manage all the content that's coming up. So this is what's left to do as we roll out through the last month and a half. We've got the SEO, which basically means the Google search capability, and making sure we have the right pages in the right order, that we have the social media campaign set up, the final art and the copywriting is going on as we speak, and then we'll do the site launch and then a market rollout after the site launch. So the goal is to essentially have a soft launch in November and let it bake and everybody feedback on it and tweak it as we go, and then in January do a heavy campaign to really get the word out and have people start using the website. I just want to make a couple comments here that the staff has been wonderful as working with us. Lacey has been our project manager and kept us all on task, and Kurt has been a phenomenal help as well with a lot of the content. His writing ability and his enthusiasm for it has really helped the entire team keep that going. And then every department head we've met has always made time for us. And I must say everybody's enthusiastic about the project, so it's really a tight team and everybody is fully on board on what we're trying to do. And so that's kind of how we got to this point. I did want to go into a little bit of the details on some of the work behind that. So if you get to the next page, Kurt. So Alexa is a ranking, it's actually owned by Amazon, and it tells you what position your website is in the world. So if you're number one, it's Google, and then you go down from there. So right now, our page is 2 million, which is not necessarily as bad as it may sound because there's millions and millions of sites. But one of the goals is after we're done to see if we can get it up underneath the 1 million site. And then the page rank go from a 1 to a 2. Next thing. Here's a point that we wanted to bring up that Court added. There is 25% of people will abandon a website if it doesn't load in 4 seconds. So what's interesting is Google will give you a lot of information about what makes a good site and what makes a bad site, because Google wants you to have a site that people want to go to. So there's a lot of analytics that people can specialize in that really study how to lay out a website, where to put the content, where to put your wording, how to lay it out, those little nuances. And Court and her team are really good at that stuff. It's just amazing to watch the work they do and the analytics they do. So Court has been providing really good feedback to the designers and the teams that are laying out the pages of exactly how to do the navigation and what pages are important. One of the things I wanted to point out is that part of what we're going to do, part of the good stuff here is what you don't do. So we want to get rid of pages that are not adding value. We want to get rid of content that people are not going to read. And we want to make sure what's there is more bright and more powerful. But the first phase is basically to make the key content we have now get over to the new site. So this is the research. These are some sites that Lacey and the staff and the team have come up with that we thought were good examples of good sites. Malibu has a very nice one. Largo does as well. So we looked at those sites to see what we liked and what we didn't like out of that and used those as guidelines. And then there's another one, Dana Point. And there's some other ones we looked at as well that were very powerful, and we're using those examples. So we're pulling the best of breed from all of these sites.
How do these, like Malibu and Largo and Dana Point, how do they rank on the Alexis?
I don't think we ran the number on those. We were looking at them purely from the aesthetics and the layout because we were really studying navigation to make sure how quickly can we get information from their site, and we wanted to use some of those techniques. And we can certainly check that out and let you know. Let's see, we did the on-site survey. We can move up a little bit on the results. Go up, Kurt. And so these are some of the questions we found that people were interested in. Let's go to the next one. And now go back to the, which one? Here.
The one.
Speak to that.
Hi, I'm Court, representing Media Garage Group. A little bit further so you can see the did you know. So my boss, so I'm the copywriter, content director, creative director, that kind of thing. My boss is Karen Helsinger, who unfortunately is unable to be here today because she's out of town. However, she does a lot of the media buying and planning that we do for Media Garage, and she works closely with people who do a lot of research on different markets. And so for our market, 72 people, 72 respondents is considered a solid base and a reliable base to gather information from. And so from the survey that we put up, and then we ran a Facebook ad, 2 Facebook ads to the survey to get more people to go to it, 84 people responded. So we do have a very solid kind of overview of what people are looking for, what people currently like, what people want to see more of, that kind of thing. So I thought that was an important tidbit to point out. Back to Hunt.
Okay, thanks. All right, next page, please, Kurt. That's a little bit more on the survey. Next page. This is just the data we were collecting. Keep going up. And so the Facebook ad, one of the things, go up to the Facebook page, please, Kurt, which is the next one, or down, the next page coming up. And so one of the things we're doing is this is a branding. It's not just a website. So Court and her team have also been doing a lot of work on our Facebook page and making sure it's consistent. This is an example of the great work they do, and this is the design that was put together for the ad that we put on Facebook. And so that was a good success there. Next page. Now the color palette, this was a key part. This took a lot of research and discussion on the team, and this is basically if you think of a renovation of your house, it's the key colors you want to pick. So that's what we have here.
I'm totally colorblind.
Oh, okay, so we're going to come to you on that. That's good to know. All right. You want to say anything about it?
Oh, I just wanted to note that these are web-specific colors, and so when they come out in print, if you have packets in front of you, they may not look exact to what it will look like on the website. Pretty close, but not exact.
And the other thing is the font, so a lot of time was spent on picking a font. The next step. And this is the upcoming final touches. We're going to work on the SEO again, which is the searching. We're going to make sure the keyword stuff and the ranking is being set up, and then we're going to update the city profile, the design, information, links, basically touch up all the last remaining parts of the site. And at that point, we'll be ready to launch. Go to the next page, I think. I think that's the last one. What's that?
What is that font called?
The font?
Well, we mocked up a few of them. I don't know if, do we want to surprise? Do we want to share? The main, so there's design best practices say that you should have two different types of fonts if you're going to use more than one. One should be a serif font, which has the little lines on the ends of the letters, and one's a sans serif font, so without that. Sans serif being like market rollout right there. So the serif font that we will be using for all the headlines and main larger copy is
The marked up, the copy font?
the Liber
Baskerville.
which I don't know if you know what that is without looking at it. We didn't want to bring it all out, you know, we wanted to leave a little bit of something for later. But, and then we have a sans serif font called Nunito?
Luna Rounded.
Oh, we changed it, yeah. So it's very clean, it works very well together. We mocked up countless different options and kind of got everybody's input and decided that these were the two that work best together. They're modern, but they're still professional. So they work in a lot of different ways, and those will also be integrated within the logo design.
That's it?
So that's the end of the update on the project.
Corey, I got a question for you. When you send out, you send out your different things that are going on, can you put a link on those so if somebody just clicks on that, we go directly to the city's website?
I do. Whenever possible. There are a couple of platforms that are a little bit finicky with regards to hyperlinks, and sometimes they don't click through, particularly if the original document is a PDF. So I try to modify it into an image and then just make the whole image clickable. Most of the time it is successful.
Okay, I'm just thinking, if we want to be transparent as we can be, if they click on that and they go right to our webpage, they'll see a lot more about the city is what I'm kind of looking at or thinking about.
Understood and agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I just want to give kudos to all the staff that has worked with our consultants on bringing this to a point where we're very excited about the product. All the department directors, folks from Media Garage, of course, Ms. LaFave and Kurt, as far as their time and effort into going through the copious amounts of pages. And it's been very fascinating to find out how robust our website is as they go through each of the pages. I think one department has 400 plus pages, so which is in some cases more than the original website. But when we get to a point to launch the website, you'll be very impressed by how intuitive it is, how modern it is, and it'll be able to really reflect our community and some of the things that the board has made a priority. So we're excited. They have kept me at bay as far as some of the design elements associated with it. I've been asking for a link for the sample page. I still haven't got it. And they actually have a code word for when they're talking about the website. So they are definitely doing everything to create some excitement and buzz about the website. So kudos to staff and everyone working to create that digital front porch that's so important for us to reintroduce ourselves to the public on digital media and social media and those things. So I can't tell you how proud I am of the group and their efforts.
This is very exciting because it's been a long time coming, so thank you, everybody who's been working on it.
Thank you all for coming. I'd like to end with a song. No, I'm just kidding. You asked about the Alexa rank for other sites that we mentioned. And although we don't have the Alexa rank for those because some of them are out of market, mostly all of them are out of market, we did do competitor keyword research. So that means the words and phrases that are bringing people to that are populating the first 2 pages of Google results for those specific websites. We did them for all main competitors. So once the site is up and launched and going and moving, and we're putting content, fresh content, regularly on it, we will concentrate on some of those words to kind of steal that traffic away from some of the competitors. So Alexa rank for them isn't necessarily as important as making sure that we rank well for those particular words and phrases.
Will catchphrases and stuff like that change quite quickly? Like next year, if you put ABC on there this year, it might be DEF next year.
Right.
How will you be able to update these easily enough so those new catchphrases are on there?
Yes, as Hunt mentioned, it's a living, breathing organism. It always changes, as it should, because it's like stagnant water. If it's just sitting there, it's gonna rot, and no one's gonna see it. So as long as you're adding fresh content all the time, we can add the content with different words and phrases all the time. However, you just have to kind of think about it as, if I were searching for a specific, which event, this event in the city of Madeira Beach, how would I search for it on Google? And that's the kind of stuff that we're thinking about. So there are lots of different tools and techniques that you can use to find, lists and lists of words and phrases. So we don't really have to worry about specific vernacular because it's all going to be covered.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mike Ford? Floor is now open for public comment. Floor is now closed. Next item is Resolution 2018-18, amending fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2019 budgets for capital projects. Fiscal year 2019 capital projects review and budget update. Director Pierce.
And Madam Mayor, I had a screenshot to show you, but I don't know if I've got enough time to put that up. The purpose of this resolution, and last year I presented this in a hurry-up fashion, and there really wasn't enough time to really explain it properly. But what we have in our capital projects is remaining balances at the end of the year that are not tied to purchase orders, and we have 2 fiscal years open, and to keep business going, we do a little procedure where we take those balances and carry them forward into the new year, just so that we have the opportunity to then create new purchase orders and allocate those funds and do transactions in the new year. And it's more or less an accounting, budgetary type move that we do, again, to keep the transactions going. So basically, it's removing those balances from the previous year and into the new year. And because of the tremendous, or a little bit of a delay between when our audit is completed and when the CAFR is done, which we're aiming for the end of March to have all that done. So basically, what I'm showing here is on Exhibit 1 is a list of 9 projects. There is 2 of those projects during Budget Committee meetings that the board has indicated that they don't desire to move forward. Basically, that's number 5 and number 6, which is the city center dock construction and the Madeira Way improvements. I just need confirmation again that it is the consensus of the board to basically remove those.
What is the Madeira Way improvements? I mean, this is like the first I've ever heard of it.
And again, this is something that has carried forward 2 or 3 years from now, and the only thing I can tell you is that it was probably for beautification or some type of median enhancement or something to enhance the way. That's all I can tell you. That whole area is going to be redone and changed anyway. So to have that money available is really not needed.
I'm looking at the bigger list that you presented, and I was under the impression the Military Court of Honor was gone.
Exactly.
What's that? I believe that was. And the Johns Pass improvements were only 75,000. The other 31,000, I don't think needs to come out until they do the survey of the pilings.
I don't want to jump ahead, but the listing there is everything in the CIP for FY 2019.
So you just don't want to change the dollar amount except the ones you'll pull out because we don't want to do them, correct?
Well, the intent of this, of listing all these projects, the ones that are rolling over and the ones in the CIP for 2019, the purpose is to give you a status of where we're at so that you have a listing of all of them. I know the CIP can be a little confusing because it mixes years, but the purpose is to look at these projects. Do you want to eliminate any? That's up to you.
Okay, so your first list is actually the bottom part of this page.
Yes, and that's my first.
So, looking at that, the transient dock construction for Johns Pass Village was, I believe, not something we voted on, was something we did vote to go out.
The transit dock construction at Johns Pass Village for that $252,000, I did not hear a consensus during the budget committee meetings that that was to be eliminated.
Okay.
I thought it was.
I definitely thought that was to go out.
I thought it was too.
The transient dock construction.
Okay, so that is gone, okay.
Right.
And along with 5 and 6?
Along with
Correct.
city
center
dock construction.
5 and 6.
Okay.
Yeah, Madeira Way improvements, and the storage
facilities.
facility design, is that the thing that they wanted to put over by that building they wanted to put at the marina or something?
We allocated 40,000 initially for that, for the previous year. And again, this is why we're listing these projects, because if we don't get started with them and complete them, they're gonna continue to roll over.
Well,
But the whole idea here is that 240 is allocated to build that facility, yes.
okay, I wasn't for that.
And my understanding was that the storage facility design of that 240, along with that 252,000 and that 50,000, were all going to work its way back into the general fund, okay? And redesign or come up with what we want, that these are not things that we want to
If you
think of in
don't
the
want
future.
these today, this money
Correct.
eventually will go back into the general fund.
Correct, yeah, and that's what I thought we had already taken a
The
consensus.
storage facility is gonna go back in the sanitation fund. 'Cause
Correct,
that's where
go
it's
back
coming
into where it
'cause
came
it's
from.
enterprise fund.
Right.
So that'll.
So is it the consensus to eliminate the storage facility?
Director Pierce, if I may, a couple of items here I would like to speak on, specifically the storage facility. Currently, we're occupying space that is outside of our community to be able to accommodate the repair and maintenance of some of our vehicles. The site does not have, as it stands right now, adequate storage capacity and facilities to accommodate a full-service public works operation, to the point where security is an issue on that site. And so my concern is if we continue to move this project down the road, we are in desperate need of having a facility to accommodate what's actually going on in this site. And I would certainly welcome the opportunity to take any of the elected officials to look at the site and look at both our off-site facility as well as our site at our Public Works Complex. Because when I had the opportunity to go over to the marina and see where they were storing the additional check valves, it was not in a facility that I would feel comfortable putting employees in a situation where if they needed to work on equipment, those types of things. So this is something that the monies, if not spent, would go right back into the enterprise fund. And eventually you'll be having some type of conversation in future meetings as to how do we provide a space for our employees. And that's the concern. If this facility goes away, we continue to operate. And when we have to send employees to our off-site facility, you're talking about 30, 40 minutes of windshield time that we're losing productivity, and they're unable to provide services to the city. So if it is the board's pleasure, to remove that, that is certainly at your discretion, but I think there's some value to, to constructing this facility, and in the event that we ever wanted to master plan and do any improvements to the Public Works Complex and Marina facility, that would be able to be augmented. And I really do believe, having conversations with the Public Works Director, the cost for basically the metal prefab building, we anticipate it coming in substantially lower than the number we have in here, to the tune of possibly maybe even half the cost that we have here. So if it is the board's desire to remove it, but certainly I would like to be able to give you a better number than what is here in the document, because in my last conversations with the Public Works Director, there's substantial improvements or substantial cost reductions that we can see with that site and effectively accommodate the needs of the department.
I don't feel it needs to be in there personally, so.
And I thought we were going to, or I thought our conversation was that although we certainly in the future will need and look for a storage facility design, that the first step of that was to really do a better plan, I guess, of what we want on that site, and then be able to dedicate the monies. Don't keep the monies in here now. Put them, and I know that we might think, well, maybe we'll forget about it then, but I don't think we'll forget about it.
No.
We know that it's necessary, but I think there certainly is enough on our plate now to
Exactly.
to do what we're doing, and not to forget about this, but to let it take a back seat.
And one thing the board can consider doing is, if the board doesn't have the desire to effectively look at funding this project or proceeding forward with this project now, you can move it out in subsequent years as a future project. But you and all of us know the more we defer, the larger the costs for any type of project is that we will experience in future years. But I think with the savings associated with the project, I think effectively you can accomplish both things the board is considering. One, to master plan or look to master plan the area that's effectively utilized for sanitation services, and two, go forward with the effective design and engineering and construction of that facility, and still be probably well within that budget number based on the conversations I've had with the department director.
I thought that, and I might be way off base, but I thought originally when Mr. Moscona come in here and talked about this, it was gonna be a big steel building, pull in, wash the garbage truck, allow the garbage men to take a shower, but then take the garbage trucks back up to the other facility. So we're not storing anything there.
We would be storing materials. We would be storing, material or items to effectively work on vehicles, those types of things. We would not be storing the trucks. That's correct.
Okay.
The trucks will not be stored here on the island.
So I think this needs to be reworded and called something else.
Right, if you're gonna wash the trucks there, I really hate seeing that, because I've seen the drain that drains right into that little waterway back there behind Save on Fishery, and that's where it used to just get dumped into when they washed them. So I am totally not for that at all.
And part of the improvements do call for some, addressing some of the issues we have on the site with compliance with the Clean Water Act, because the way the site is constructed, the topography and the drainage and all that, there's some concerns that we have that we are effectively compromising the water body that's adjacent to our facility, and first and foremost, that should be a priority for us. So this entire project, I think, was intended to be able to address those things.
This entire project, in my way of thinking, needs to go away from here totally and get somewhere down the line restarted in a format that makes sense, because this doesn't make sense to me.
By a master plan.
By
It
a master
needs to go
plan
back
of
to the
sorts,
Yeah.
yes.
Back to the drawing board, give
But
us more
I think-
data.
I think we need to leave the money there at this point.
It doesn't matter, just go back to sanitation fund, and then if we need it, it'll be
But
right
by
there.
leaving the money there, we're almost, but if we leave the money there and it just keeps saying not started, then that's not a good thing.
That's not
That's
good.
why
That's
I'm
not what I was
thinking it
saying.
should go
That's
back.
not what I was saying.
Oh, okay,
I
sorry.
was saying, leave the money there, have them do a better information for us, like on the water quality, on everything it's gonna be used for, what's gonna be stored, what is this facility gonna be?
What's it gonna look like?
I don't think we need to leave it
You
there.
know, well, okay, you leave it there and you move it over, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference.
It's
You
just
know?
taking out of here as being a not started project forever again.
Yes.
Well-
Until it actually has some teeth and it's on the table as being presented as the global picture of what they want to do, then.
One more time, the money would be there.
Right.
They would still have to come back to you, and you would have to approve.
Exactly.
Before it becomes a purchase order and go forward, you would have to get a board of consensus and approval, or by vote.
I would like the city to come back to us and talk to us about the Clean Water Act, about the facility, all those different things that we just talked about, you know. Because I'm very fuzzy on the big picture, you know, and I would like to.
It's because there's not one.
And none of these projects, by rolling over or being in the budget, gives a guarantee that these projects are gonna come to fruition. There is always an opportunity to move or modify or adjust projects, what have you. You can even, in some situations, I've seen it, people keep projects in the budget, but just don't fund them. They're unfunded projects. And in the event that there is a compelling argument, then the board can associate the monies with the particular project. But we can do some more research and bring that back to the board. If it's the board's desire to do so, staff can address that, and I could have Mr. Carrier speak specifically to what are some of the elements associated with the Clean Water Act, and then get with the department director as far as what are all the intricacies associated with this project, so the board can get an entire picture of what this project consists of.
So I guess what I'm hearing from the board is that's kind of 50-50, but you're definite on number 3, number 5, and number 6, and being eliminated.
When we had and for the board's edification, item number 3, that particular item is designed, engineered, permitting. There has been monies that are associated with that project, so effectively scrapping that project would have there would be a loss, and there is monies that's already been appropriated for that, and I believe we've even had conversations with local businesses about that project effectively coming to life, because it's been discussed in subsequent meetings, and there was
Presentation by the director.
Yeah, there was presentations where it was implied that this project was moving forward, so to effectively move it off, I think that's one of the things that the local businesses said, that there's no opportunity for transient boat docks having John's Pass being a tourist destination and not having an ability to boat in. This would be a huge benefit to the businesses and to the community. But again, that is the board's pleasure as to how you wish to proceed forward. But if you do not fund this project or move forward with this project, note that it has already been designed, engineered, permitting, and this has been a project that's probably been ongoing for about 2 years now plus.
Yes, it is.
This is a project that I remember when I was sitting out in the audience, and the transient dock construction at Johns Pass Village was like $70,000. Okay, and maybe that was the engineering design, but I had a problem certainly with it then, and I certainly have a problem with it now because of the safety and health of the boaters. Okay, I think it's fine to get 25 gazillion boats in that little area around the bell tower, but it's quite another thing to keep all those people safe and with transient docks. And I thought we had definitely, I thought we had discussed that, Jonathan, and you had, confirmed to us that something was already gone through in the permitting thing, and we still said no. We still said no. We really don't.
We scrapped it.
That's right, scrap it. I think it's real fluff. I mean, I think it's, if you had maybe 3 times as much waterway, you might consider something like that. But I mean, all you have to do is go up there and look at the bell tower and look at, I think, what were they talking about, 16 perhaps?
I think it was 60.
16, yeah, 16 transient docks there, and realize the tremendous liability and the safety and the health, health of anybody on those boats. I mean, we all know whether there's drinking or not, it doesn't matter. It just
Right.
takes one little slip. So that's my thoughts. I wanted it gone. I wanted that money put into the infrastructure fund.
By the way, I want to make one thing clear to the board too. The ones you identify here, I'm going to be coming back with a resolution on November 13th. I'm not going to close out the year until probably February or March. So there still will be time, if you eliminate something here, there'll still be time to add it back if we made a mistake. So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay. But I do remember, I looked at my old notes even back from the budget thing, and it seemed like, and it was more than just me, I was ticking off just different names.
The purpose of this resolution, one more time, is so that we're bringing these balances forward so to not delay transactions and the development of these projects and the use of the money going forward prior to February and March.
Okay.
Director Pierce, when this item was discussed with members of the Budget Committee, were these projects adopted, or were these projects in their overall recommendation to the board?
We discussed these projects. I don't think there was a strong yes or no on any of these things. There was some confusion with
I thought there was.
with the city docks and Madeira Way. Clearly, there was some confusion there with those two items.
You asked if it went to the budget committee. They might have said yes, they might have said no. That's not the issue. The issue is nothing went to the budget committee till after we already voted on it. That was our biggest complaint this last year with the budget committee. They were getting things after the fact, after they had already come to us. Then Mr. Pierce was then giving it to the budget committee to talk about. So we'd already made up our mind and voted on it here before it ever went to the budget committee. That's why I said the budget committee was broke last year.
Well, they could
agree with
have put
that
it,
statement.
they could have put it on the finalization letter that they actually gave, and I don't have a copy of that with me, but when they, what would you call it, checked off on the budget, they also made a letter, drafted a letter on the items that they wanted continued on, right? Or that weren't answered to them for this past budget year, and some of these might have been on there.
I didn't see some of these weren't on that recommendation.
No, I don't.
Because I think their recommendations were things that really they wanted to see that weren't in the budget, that they kind of wanted to see in the budget, and they had some concerns over. I think one of them was the quick response vehicle.
Right.
That was one of them, and we weren't able to get that in the budget. Another one was upgrading the parks. And again, I don't think we put too much in there in the budget for that, for that item as well. So.
I'd like to bring up one more thing when it comes to the resolutions. I've been going back from 2012 to present, going through minutes of every friggin' meeting. And in the past, I saw, a resolution to do X amount of dollars to here, or make it from there, or to there, or wherever. But it never told me, it would never tell me what it's going to or coming from. Here, he has Exhibit 1, and it lists all the things. I would like those words in the resolution, because when I went to the city clerk, she had to kind of pull up and start digging for me. Okay, what's resolution from 2015, such and such, such and such? What's it for? I have no idea. And if I ask for resolutions again, they're going to get this, and they're not going to get this other page, the exhibits. So I would like those words, what's involved in the resolution itself.
Well, my exhibit is going to be attached to that.
But if I call her and say I want resolution such and such, she's going to give the resolution, she's not going to give the attachment more than likely.
Well, it's going to be attached. Because in the resolution, I'm referring to the exhibit.
I understand that, but I'm just saying the problems I've had going
I
back
understand.
from 2012 to
Yep.
2017.
I've seen some of those.
I mean, I have no idea what the heck I'm talking about.
Right,
It's just saying move the money from here to here. From what to what?
right.
So,
That's true.
You know, one more thing, and I think I indicated to some of the commissioners, Vice Mayor Weinstein, and I've had this conversation time and time again with the city auditor. The city auditor felt like there were too many budget transfers during the previous years. He's in favor of a mid-year cleanup and then an end-of-the-year cleanup. The end-of-the-year cleanup, I'm going to be giving that to you on the 13th. And clearly, that's what I'm used to and places I've been as well. You do a mid-year and then a final, and it's less confusing that way, rather than doing transfers, and especially in between departments, which is really not needed. The only obligation is that you have is no department at the end of the year can go in the red. And that's why you make sure at the end of the year that you take care of a budget by way of budget amendment, and you will see this, that no one department goes in the red, i.e. that the expenditures exceed the budget. You can't have that.
I understand all that. That was, you know, 7 or 8 years from now, like I'm going back to 2012, and I want to see resolution such and such. It's not telling me anything. It's just saying that the commission voted yes or no on this particular resolution. And it's saying we got 500,000 here and it's going to here. It's not telling me an account number, or it might tell me an account number, but it's not telling me what that account is. You know, so I don't know. So what I'm asking for is, did you put in there like comma, this and this and this and this and this? You know,
Just this list, the list.
but then 7 years from now, I've got to find that.
You're looking for a
You want it
trail.
in the resolution, fine.
It will be in the resolution,
It
Commissioner.
is,
Not an attachment.
it's no different than a court proceeding. When you cite an exhibit, you don't put in the entire elements associated with the exhibit, because there's going to be a time where we reference a exhibit to a resolution that could be 30 or 40 pages, and you would have a 30 or 40 page resolution that in most parts you only want to see the resolution to say this was the action that the board took, because the resolution speaks to the action the board took, not necessarily all the nuances and intricacy. Even with ordinances, it's very common to see exhibits references, and the clerk can probably provide a better opinion that those if it's referenced as an exhibit, is an attachment to the resolution. So if somebody asks for that resolution, they are supposed to get the exhibit with it.
Yes.
I have seen in the past, back up what Douther was saying, there has been times in providing records that for some reason the attachments were not attached to the resolution, and I found it on other documents as well. So we've been trying to go back as far as we can, finding the actual attachment that was approved by the board at that time and attach it to it. Some we were not able to do that because they're not there. But anything that we've been doing from last year to this year, we make sure that all attachments are there, including contracts.
I'm just saying, if he lists like seawall, transient dock, you know.
We know. I got the point.
Madam Mayor and
You want it
Commissioners,
listed in the resolution.
I just want to make one more thing clear too. On the Gulf Boulevard improvements, you might say, well, why are we only carrying over 178,000 there? Well, that's why I put the note on the bottom that right now, you've got two things impacting that one area. That's the underground utilities. There is an existing PO for $1 million, and that's why I put the note on the bottom. That's a purchase order. That purchase order is still active, and that's why it's not added. And so the 178 balance up there is funds that are not committed. Basically, it's the contingency account for the road resurfacing. And in the other two amounts, the 1.5 and the 136,000 is purchase orders for Ajax and CPWG for the resurfacing. So I wanted to explain that difference, that 178 that we're recommending carrying forward is an amount that's not tied to a purchase order, because basically that's the contingency for the resurfacing. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay.
So I believe the consensus is at this point, at a minimum, the board is saying that 5 and 6 is to go, but at this point in time,
That's not what we're saying.
okay.
First of all, we haven't discussed number 6.
Okay.
And I don't want to take that out, because you say, it's going to change anyway, but there's a long way between now and when the construction is finished.
Okay.
And I was writing down there today thinking there was so much more we could do just to the median alone to make it stand out.
I think that was the purpose of it, yes, yeah.
So I would want to keep that one in there.
Okay.
I don't.
I don't.
I don't want the transit dock construction at the pass,
Right,
the City Center dock,
right.
the Deerway improvements, or the storage facility design. Those are the ones I.
3, 5, 6, and 7.
Let's see. I was looking at the other list. Transient, 3, 5, 6, and 7. Yes, that is correct.
3, 5, 6, and 7?
Right.
And
And I guess, I'm following the discussion with the city manager and then also with Walt when you say, well, you can really wait until February. What did you say? You can, everything's not really settled.
When we close out the previous fiscal year, which would most likely be at the end of March.
But if we're so sure that these items are the ones that are in the best interest of the budget and the city and that, then why can't we strike them off instead of, we can strike them off instead of waiting until February? It's like, we've already, like, I thought that those items were taken off.
All I was saying before is, if you strike something off now, it's probably gonna be February or March when we roll over and I would identify, okay, the board voted, they don't want that, I wouldn't roll it over.
Okay.
So there is still a window of time that if you eliminate 5, 6, and 7, then determine, say like in December, hey, we want to really add that back. Like the mayor may want the Madeira Way back and it's now a consensus, you can still have time to do that.
Right.
Right, but I'd like to see, since this one sat out there, Deerway improvements, she got $73,582. Obviously, somebody went to some trouble to come up with 582 on there. We got no idea what the plan is. Give us a plan before this just sits out there and keeps rolling on and rolling on.
I agree.
And you say there's $73,000 out there.
What does it mean?
Just because there's 73 doesn't need to mean it needs to all be spent. So come to us with a game plan with a real dollar amount other than something just stuck out there.
I agree. The whole idea why I listed all the projects on my other part of this item is so that, and you can look at the status and go project by project and see the status. So if something's not happening or we're not going forward on a project as you desire, then it's your right to say, hey, look, where are we on these things? Because if we don't attack them in a timely basis, before you know it, it's going to be March, it's going to be June, and we're going to be this time next year without a project being completed.
Okay. Consensus.
Well,
number 3.
I personally would like to keep Madeira Way improvements in there and the storage facility until we get more information.
I don't. So, where are you on those two?
I think we do away, we keep the storage area and we do away with Madeira Way.
So let's do this one at a time.
Okay.
Number 3, transient dock construction.
So, are we consensus to go away?
Okay,
Okay.
number 3's gone. Number 5, city center dock construction.
Go away.
Away,
Gone? Okay,
gone. Madeira Way improvements.
Go away.
Go away.
keep. Keep? Well, that's consensus then.
Okay, away. That's why it was easier to one at a time. Storage facility design.
Keep.
1 keep. 1 go away.
Keep. Go away. Nancy? Okay,
What?
so we're keeping 7.
Okay, 7 is staying. Okay.
Now, we're not quite finished with that page because military code of honor needs to go away as far as I'm concerned.
Okay,
Totally
that's the other
100%
list.
yeah. And
That's the other list of projects. So we're now done with this resolution, and I'm going to be coming back on the 13th with the ones that you want, which basically will not include 3, 5, and 6. And I'll make this other comment. Clara and I are still working on this draft resolution. We are still tweaking this, so it may change a little bit. These figures also may change by a non-significant item or difference as well. So I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so on the master list of projects, which totaled at 6.1 million, are there projects other than the ones we've already identified that there's some discussion on?
The military court of honor, like the mayor said. I thought we got rid of that one.
Well, I didn't know, we didn't have a consensus, I don't think.
Yeah,
There was no consensus to eliminate that during the budget process.
I thought there was, but.
If I may, Madam Mayor, in the conversation that we had with the board, it was that before we were to effectively remove the project, that there is opportunities for some private sector funding, and all this would have to come back to the board for consideration. I've had a very good conversations from folks from the American Legions here in our community, American Legion, and they are interested and support the project. And I would encourage the board that in the event that you would remove the funding, that we can still, if we are able to raise private capital and contributions from other entities, that we be able to move forward with such a project, because I really do believe once the community is engaged in this particular project and hear about the nature of this project, I think you will get some private sector contribution as well as some contributions from other philanthropic organizations. And it may take a year or two, it may be a capital campaign. The money that was put in there was seed money to effectively have that project come to life here over the next year. But if it's the monetary elements associated with it, staff would just recommend that you would allow for us the opportunity to embark upon a capital campaign to see where we get, because if we are able to raise $25,000 at that time, the board may say we're okay with matching that contribution, et cetera, because it really does add an element to that park, and I think it makes it a place where we can have Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and it provides for a sense of community. And having a community that has such a large number of veterans, I think it's a great opportunity for us to have such a place in our community. But if it is your desire to remove the funding with that, staff would just ask that you have it as an unfunded project, and then we can proceed forward with, moving forward with a capital campaign.
I think where I have the problem with stuff like this is the fact somebody just throws a number out there. There's nothing to support this number. There's nothing to say anything about a project. It's let's throw a number out there and see where it takes us. Now, we might not even have to spend this, but I know how cities are. They think there's $40,000 out there, so they're going to spend the whole $40,000. I would rather see the city come to us with a project, a defined project with the community involvement, and say, hey, the community wants to be involved in this, and then we can decide. But let's have a game plan before just throwing numbers out there in a budget that aren't substantiated by any type of plan.
And what's it going to cost us going forward?
Right, and what is the maintenance on something like this going to be? Because everything has maintenance on it. We all know the 9/11 Memorial, as grand as it is, has maintenance on it. Everything outdoors here has maintenance on it. So it's not just a one-time build out of something.
I thought that when we talked about this, the major problem was that we didn't like what was being talked about. And then I came back to you with some pictures of other ones that I had seen and what's going on. And I think, kind of like Nancy said, before we fund something, we really need to look at what it's going to cost and what we're funding. Just don't say we're going to have this thing with we're going to have a circle and it's going to cost us $40,000. But what's going to be in the circle? How is it going to look? What's it going to do? And
what does it cost to put a new flag in every 6 months? Those flags aren't cheap. You know that.
Well, and if we were to effectively, and the concern that we have is that we did go through a process internally to project what the cost is, but the thing is, if we go through the process to get prices and estimates and build full scopes of projects, and then the board effectively wish that these projects do not come to fruition, then there's a lot of staff time and resources and actually private contractors' time that goes in to building these scopes. So every agency I've ever worked in says, if we're gonna construct a roadway, our best estimate is $2 million. And then when the project goes out to bid, that's when you get the actual hard numbers associated with the project. We can sketch out conceptually what we have, but we don't have a construction crew or an engineering crew on staff to be able to get to the granular details. We only know what our best guesstimate is, and that information as far as what the cost is, there was an itemized breakdown that was provided to me that says, hey, Jonathan, not for nothing, that the costs are gonna probably be around $40,000, and I thought that we can effectively look to get that number down, but to be able to see that project come to fruition with city resources, $40,000 was the number that was provided by the consultant, but I think the number is kind of high, and I do believe that you would get a lot of community support. So if it is the board's pleasure to have staff come back with a more concrete, drilled down number, we can do that.
I just want to know what it's going to look like. That's my main concern. I don't mind putting the money out there if it's going to be something that's nice or whatever, but, what's it going to look like? I have no idea. I can't even conceptually conceive what we're talking about at this
Come
point.
with a plan.
Huh?
Come with a plan.
Yes.
And-
Something concrete. Yeah.
And that's effectively what we would do, is we would share with you what the plan is, what the design elements are, those kind of things. We just have to see, again, if it's the desire to move forward or not to move forward on the project.
I like going forward with the Military Court of Honor, because I said in the very beginning, and I still believe in it, it is a small amount of money to pay for something that brings a continuity and a source of, community, what's the word for it? Community pride, okay? I think that there's a lot of, I think being the closeness to the Veterans Hospital, the age group within our community, the amount of service time that maybe not them, but their siblings, whatever, have served. I just think it's a nice thing to have that in the Causeway Park. I think it would be I'm not for a lot of the other type of individual organizations, but I think that this is a combination of all of those organizations. So my part of if we're taking account, my part is to leave it in there.
Okay.
I agree. I think we leave it in there, but I would just like something, a plan. What are we doing?
Okay, just want to leave it in there?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I want to leave it in there.
By the way, on this list, there's no urgency. This money is
Right.
already in the FY 2019
We
budget.
just want to reach a consensus here on
Okay,
this.
Okay.
Keep her
From
going.
what I've heard, I'm willing to go with it just like some of these other things, until we get a plan. Leave it there till we have a plan. Then if we don't like the plan, we can say no.
Okay, it's in.
What about you? Commissioner
I didn't
Hodges?
vote for the record, but it's in.
Okay.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, move on.
All right, so there's nothing else?
There's
on
nothing
there?
else on this list. I just
Okay.
wanted to provide a list of what's in the budget, what are the balances, just so you had a total list, and especially what the current status is of each project. And would like to bring this back to you, occasionally, so that you see what the status is of these projects that we do have budgeted.
Like every workshop? Or you want to do it quarterly, or?
Maybe
What'd you have in mind?
Yeah, we can do it quarterly.
Quarterly.
Okay. I think it's a good idea.
The only thing I have more to say on this is, I would like to see a complete list of all the stormwater projects, all the streets that need fixing for flooding.
It's every street in the city.
Well, ultimately, it probably is, but there are certain streets that really.
Areas.
Or in
Right.
areas that, and I don't think they're all included in the capital projects. And I've asked questions about this before, and I've been told, well, it's in the master plan. Well, I'd like to see the master plan, because maybe some of these we can't get to for 4 more years, but just something that we can tell people, saying, well, your street's going to get fixed at this particular time. So, Thank you. All right, onward, surplus fire truck.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I just wanted to provide an update on the research of our previous conversation about the surplus fire truck. We have received an estimated bid, and this is just casual conversation with the broker. In the email that was provided in the packet, they said they saw a similar unit in spec, age, and mileage sell last year for a bit under $20,000. So our guess would be somewhere in the $10,000 to $20,000 range as far as what we would receive if we surplused it and sold it. And in my research, moving the other direction to keep it, we've run into, there would be maintenance costs, there would be insurance costs. I didn't get a whole number on those because we were waiting on this brokerage thing, but there would be an anticipated cost in keeping the thing and utilizing it for activities. So I just wanted to, now that there is a brokerage estimate, I kind of wanted to present that and see if there was any sort of direction preferred by the commission at this time, or if just to keep moving forward.
Jay, could you kind of explain a little bit about the activities for it? What was the plan for it?
Yeah, the idea was that we would strip it of the fire apparatus gear. A conversation with our mechanic, he basically explained that, we'd have to take the pump out of it, and he could do that on his own. We wouldn't have to do that. We wouldn't have to outsource that to somebody. Any sort of change beyond that for grilling or beverages or whatever that we decided to do with it would either through some sort of donation or a cost to the city. But I didn't take it that much further due to us not having this number and not knowing, so.
Okay, so this is something that would basically just stay at the rec center?
Yeah, we would utilize it for special events. We would advertise with other cities, utilize it for their events as well. Any parade type event, and it's not necessarily a parade. I speak of like when we drop Santa Claus in the mayor and commissioners off for the Christmas tree and events like that. We would utilize that truck instead of one of the ones that we're avoiding putting mileage on as far as their life is concerned.
Is the truck not working? The fire department can't use it?
It is, well, since they've already replaced it, we've got 3. It has reached the end of its useful life as a fire apparatus as far as the city of Madeira Beach is concerned.
I guess what I thought about when I was reading this, the fire department's coming to us and asking us to spend $40,000 plus on another truck and equiping it to go to the Reddingtons if something comes up. Why aren't we keeping this truck that's already equipped? If we run more miles on it, it's not a big deal, and use that to run to the Reddingtons instead of going out and spending $40,000 on a new piece.
From my understanding,
It's not equipped with the
Is not
same
all it
thing.
is,
Plus
because,
equipping it.
plus equipping it is another $30,000 or $50,000.
Right, it couldn't take the place of, for instance, the vehicle that the fire department.
Currently, that vehicle is at the end of its useful life and would not be something that would be a reliable unit to put in service.
additionally, I know there was and again, I'm the rec director, I'm just speaking from the meetings I've been in, but there was concern about staffing with this additional rapid recovery vehicle. The minimum requirement for the rapid recovery vehicle is 2. The minimum requirement for this truck to leave the bay would be 3. So that would be even additional further if we were to keep it. So unrelated to the rec department, but that's just my understanding there. So anyway, I just wanted to see if there was a desire of the board for me to continue to research this project, or if they wanted to go another direction.
I think for a city our size, it's not that great an idea. If we're a bigger city, like Seminole or Largo or something, but because they could take this to all kinds of parks and all kinds of events in their big city.
Plus, we'd be adding to the rec budget, which is already exorbitant for a city our size, and the expense is gonna be overwhelming. Everybody says we can rent it out. It'll never get rented out because they'll come to us and want us to waive all the fees.
Where's the
What
market
else
to
is
do
new,
that?
you know,
And there's
so-
liability of children playing on it.
Yeah.
No, I just throw in my 2 cents, and I think that we should surplus it.
I agree.
We should.
Yeah,
as soon as possible.
And that's one of the things that once we knew if it would have come back at 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, then it may be, you know what, it may be advantageous for us. But once it, you know, the broker saying it's $15,000 to $20,000 at the staff level, we said, well, it's probably advantageous for us to surplus it. But you can see that, you know, when we purchased it, we paid $229,000 for it, and those things depreciate a bunch.
Yeah,
I know we just paid
Yeah.
$750,000 for one that is probably depreciated a whole lot.
Well, personally speaking, I just want to say I appreciate you guys at least giving me the opportunity to research it.
Thank you, Judge.
So-
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
And the final item is City of Madeira Beach downtown market fee / waiver and co-sponsor.
What happened to F?
Yep, F,
What happened to F?
Oh, yeah.
we have
That's the
F,
last one, sorry.
but F should be pretty,
I was trying to hurry this meeting up.
pretty
You
quick.
can't talk about it.
Besides, it's about Jim.
Yeah, the executive assistant to the city manager is putting up the PowerPoint, but you were provided a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that goes through Employee of the Year, Volunteer of the Year, and I made a tweak to the Citizen of the Year, calling it Outstanding Citizen of the Year. In some of my research, a lot of communities put that in there to recognize the contribution that folks have made throughout their community on and above what we would normally see. But I'll walk you through the Employee of the Year and how staff recommends us moving forward. Our hope is that on or before October 1, the department directors will nominate one employee within their respective departments for consideration. Once they have nominated that employee, those nominations are provided to the executive assistant to the city manager. If they do not have an employee in their respective department that they are nominating, they can nominate an employee in another department. Once the nominations are received by the executive assistant to the city manager, a ballot will be created highlighting the nominee's accomplishments and accolades. The department directors at the first department director meeting of the fiscal year will discuss the nominees, their accomplishments, and to ensure that they are all in good standings with no prior disciplinary actions during the preceding year. We will also make sure that they exhibit the organization's core values in their daily activities and that they represent the organization well, both in the office and outside of the office. Once the ballots have been presented to department directors and we go through the process of eliminations, which may consist of multiple rounds, we will ultimately select an employee of the year to be recognized at a regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners, and they will also be recognized at the appreciation dinner. One of the things that we wanted to provide for the Employee of the Year is a plaque, but also 2 floating holidays that provide no monetary value. The employee would have to use that within the fiscal year, so it would not carry over, but it's a nice way to effectively recognize someone for their contributions to the city and receiving that award. Now, I can tell you the other side of that, what I've heard from some employees that have been fortunate to win awards like that, is they're the reason that they're the Employee of the Year is they don't take time off, and they're such a valuable asset to the organization. So some entities have looked to do some other types of prizes or other types of recognition. You cannot necessarily call it a bonus, because if you offer a bonus, you have to have a bonus plan in place, and it has to be afforded to all employees, which effectively this could be argued that it is. But we're looking at something, and we probably are going to survey the department directors to see, is there another way or another recognition that we can provide to employees for outstanding service. But that, in generality, is how we would handle the Employee of the Year on the internal side, and then bring that to the board for a recognition. Is there any questions specific to the Employee of the Year before I jump into Volunteer of the Year? Sure.
Can you, what about a gift certificate? It's not a bonus, but a gift certificate instead of the plaque or the additional floating holidays, making it either or?
We can do the gift certificate, but then finance will tell you that that employee has to pay taxes on it because it is considered a benefit. So you can give an employee a, $100 gift certificate, and then you have to take the taxes out of their check, so.
Okay, but you can include the taxes in the amount, and that'll net out. I mean, kind of tacky, but.
Yeah.
But you could. I remember doing that at certain times, including the tax that would be taken out. So the employee, if they get a $100 gift certificate, they really are getting $100 because you're giving them 110 or 112.
And in most cases with most folks is that the time off is great, but the cash would be
It's fun.
much appreciated.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather have cash than a plaque.
Well,
Yeah.
there's another thing where we could give a stipend for $100, put it in their pay, and then the tax is automatically taken. So you could do it that way too.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we can certainly work through
just a
that.
thought.
And one of the things I do want to communicate to the board, if there is any comments or thoughts or revisions to what's being drafted, all this is going to come back to you by virtue of a resolution. So you'll be able to memorialize it with official action of the board, and so we will know how the process is to go moving forward. And that's one of the things that will give the flexibility in the resolution to provide a prize of, no more than $200 or what have you, value to that employee, making sure that legal reviews it for legal sufficiency and that there's no issues with regards to that. All right, we'll move on to the next item, Volunteer of the Year. Honor before October 1st, the Executive Assistant to the City Manager and the Volunteer Coordinator will review 3 nominees as proffered by the Volunteer Coordinator for consideration. The City Manager will review the submissions with the committee, which is comprised of the Volunteer Coordinator and the Executive Assistant to the City Manager. The Volunteer of the Year, it's important to note that these are individuals that are registered volunteers with the City of Madeira Beach. And in most cases, these are individuals that provide service to the city and manage our front desk. If we are to look to expand it, it's going to be hard for us to effectively try to track and manage that because our volunteer coordinator is not necessarily managing all the volunteers that you may see at other departments or doing other things. So one of the things that we incorporated, and you'll see it in the Outstanding Citizen of the Year, an opportunity for people to be recognized for volunteer contributions outside of the Volunteer of the Year program. But also one of the things we want to do is look to promote and encourage more people to serve as volunteers within the city. But this would be recognizing those that are registered volunteers. The selection criteria would consist of the following: dependable, reliable, trustworthy, customer service, adherence to the city's mission, vision, and core values, ongoing involvement and impact demonstrated, real impacts and outcomes and outputs that create that experience for folks when they come into City Hall and they interact with our volunteers. Once the committee votes on the nominees, they will be recognized at a regular Board of Commissioners meeting, and at the appreciation dinner, Volunteer of the Year will receive a plaque, an award, and a proclamation recognizing their commitment to the city and a small gift or a token of appreciation from the City of Madeira Beach. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right.
With the City of Madeira Beach, because there are a lot of people, especially in the winter months. We do have, visitors to Madeira Beach who spend a lot of time on the beach cleaning up.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
and I had initially thought, oh God, they can be included in this pool,
Yeah.
but no, I guess it's important to qualify because it is. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
The process for the Outstanding Citizen of the Year is on or before October 1st. Anyone can nominate an individual for Outstanding Citizen of the Year that recognizes a person that has made noteworthy contributions during the previous year or given outstanding service to the local community over a number of years and shall be eligible for the Outstanding Citizen of the Year. What we would do with this particular program is that we would allow for a application to be submitted that will be posted on our website from July 1st to September 1st. Those submissions will be collected. We will ask for information about the volunteer work of the organizations they're involved with, a little brief synopsis about that particular individual. Basically, an entire application they will fill out, and it can be submitted by a member of their social club, or Joe Q Citizen can submit individuals for that particular award. The criteria that we would look for in those applications is outstanding achievement or contributions towards the city, strive to make a positive impact within the city of Madeira Beach, must have a substantial voluntary contributions within the city, enhance the life of those who live, work, and play in the city of Madeira Beach, address and fulfill the needs and concerns of the city of Madeira Beach, serve as a positive role model throughout the city of Madeira Beach. One of the things in this particular application process is that the individual has to be a member of our community, has to reside within the municipal boundaries of the city of Madeira Beach. We have looked at an opportunity to look to recognize someone this year, but however, not having the application process in place prior to, our recommendation would be that we would start commencing, of course, October 2018, but look to recognize our first Citizen of the Year in November 2019, which will be our appreciation luncheon or dinner. One of the things that we want to make sure is we provide them with recognition with a plaque proclamation, and then recognizing them at a regular board meeting, as well as the appreciation dinner. So that is basically the process that we've set forth. Now, what will happen is once those applications are complete, we will provide you the completed applications that will be reviewed by staff, and then what we will do is we would create a ballot whereby we will bring those to you, whether, and that's one of the things I left open-ended. If the board wants to see all the applications, do you want to see the top 10 or top 5 that's vetted by staff? However you wish to do that, then the clerk will create a ballot. You will effectively vote on the individuals that are considered nominees for that, and then at that point, that person would be recognized as the Outstanding Citizen of the Year, et cetera. So that's kind of the process that we put forward for that award. Applications will be available online. We'll be able to print all those applications. We'll be able to screen them, and the individual has to be a resident of the city of Madeira Beach. So that's, in a nutshell, all the awards program. So staff wanted to get direction from the board or anything that you would like to see us incorporate in the resolution, because I would like to bring you a resolution for this at the first meeting in November. And for the Volunteer of the Year, our volunteer coordinator has already proffered a name of an individual that we will recognize at the November 9th meeting, or November 13th meeting of the Board of Commissioners. And the Employee of the Year, we've gotten some of the submissions from the department director, so now it's just the opportunity for them to effectively vote on the Employee of the Year. And the Citizen of the Year, we would do that in the subsequent year, unless the board had an individual that they would choose to recognize for that award.
I think with the Citizen of the Year, the third one must have made a substantial voluntary contribution within the city of Madeira Beach. I think that needs to come out.
And that's one of the things that was hard, because I was looking and doing some research. A lot of organizations had it that way, or had it that if somebody volunteers, in your particular case, you know, at Bay Pines or what have you, well, that's a contribution to mankind, your fellow peers, those types of things, and that's a value. So you can make it that it could be volunteer contributions, et cetera, you know.
I would see that versus over volunteer for just the city of Madeira Beach. Because let's say you have a soldier you want to make the Citizen of the Year. He might not be able to be volunteering for the city of Madeira Beach, but what he does in his military role might make him a Citizen of the Year for Madeira Beach. There's a lot of variables in there, and I think by putting that in there, you become kind of limited.
I agree. Had you looked Oops. Had you looked at any other selection processes or thought of any other ones? Because we used to here, okay, the process used to be that each commissioner in private by themselves would nominate two people that they felt were worthy of it. And then it would all go into a pot, and I guess I believe that commissioner then would make their little, speech for why that person should be it, and then a vote was taken, I guess. I remember that from when I was Citizen of the Year.
That's what I was going to ask.
I did
And do we
review,
still have the bronze thing? Do we still have that plaque that identifies all the past Citizens of the Year?
I think somebody had come across it, if I'm not mistaken.
Good,
Yeah.
because yes, we had a very nice plaque, and that person was identified as the Citizen of the Year, and I think that meant something more than even just a gift or a plaque.
Yeah, and one of the things that, when I was looking at Citizen of the Year awards throughout the country, there was situations where the applications were submitted online and the elected officials will review it. And I was reading some of the posts and all that, and one of the things the folks said is that when they went to the application process, they perceived the process to be more transparent because it wasn't an elected official that was giving a name. It was more so you were reviewing the application. You may know the folks that are being submitted, but you were reviewing and making a decision based on the merits and the four corners of the page versus a personal relationship with individuals. So that was why it was very common in some of the research that I did to find that you had an application process specifically for the Citizen of the Year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How about Commissioner of the Year?
All of you would win every year. How could we ever make that decision?
You can't be you're a mayor, you're not a commissioner.
She gets to vote.
That you went into this,
So you
because I
better be
think
nice to
it's
me.
a very good way of continuing with involvement of more people within the city and of recognizing those individuals who have who've done works for the city. Yeah, so I appreciate it.
And I think we should get however it's done, be able to see all the applications, because I don't think there'll be that many.
Okay.
All right, so you guys want to see all the applications then?
Top five. Yeah, it's a lot of reading when you get into that. Everything else would do.
Let's say this year, we should see all of them and see how it
Yeah.
goes.
You can
We're
see
not
it.
going to do it this year.
Okay. All right, so it's, there's a consensus from the board to move forward, and I'll make the tweaks and incorporate it in a resolution, and then we'll bring that forward to you at the next regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners.
But is everybody kind of online as far as maybe not on the plaque thing, but money instead of the award, for instance, to the employee or to the,
I think a plaque's important.
do you?
Yeah, we
Because you
would
always
still
have
give
a
the plaque.
Money goes
Oh, okay,
down.
Yeah, we would still give the plaque
Oh, okay.
as well, yeah.
okay.
And display the plaque.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, moving on.
And Madam Mayor, if you're ready, we can go into the
To G.
next and last item.
I'm ready for G.
Let's go.
Ready,
you
so
guys ready?
patiently, and thank you for waiting.
All right. Madam Mayor and members of the Board of Commissioners, this item before you is to seek authorization for staff to proceed forward with assisting our local Madeira Way merchants in reconstituting the downtown market. In conversations that we have had with representatives of businesses down off of Madeira Way, there is a desire to effectively restart the market. The market was instrumental to the local businesses and assisted in most cases of bringing people to the area that have never come to the area, and also assisting the local businesses financially. Late this afternoon, we did receive some email correspondence from local businesses asking for the Board of Commissioners to support such an initiative. What staff is requesting is the ability to work with the merchants group and to allow for some flexibility to waive some fees with restarting the market. We have had productive conversations with the developer of the project on Madeira Way, and he has agreed to be a financial contributor to ensure that this market is successful. In conversations with the local businesses, there is a desire to be more inclusive, more participatory in the actions and how the market is managed. The day that has been identified is Sunday. Sunday mainly because of the construction that will be occurring associated with the town center project, and the city has an ordinance on the books that prohibits construction on Sundays. So effectively, we would not see any construction material, or we would not have construction trucks and staff on property during the market. Also, having the market on Sunday, there's an opportunity to see additional business and additional activity that traditionally would not occur because of just people at work and having other things going on during the week. So staff is just requesting that we are able to move forward to assist in the facilitating of the market for the month of November and December, and then to bring back a comprehensive report that really incorporates all the elements associated with the market and what the plan is moving forward to be able to sustain the market both in the short term and the long term, and who would be the entity effectively managing the coordination with the local businesses. We believe that the fiscal impact will probably be about $1,500, and that will be more associated with staff costs as far as some of the road closure elements with it. But we would like to be able to help our local businesses, because we know construction is a major deterrent for folks when they know it's actively occurring on a roadway. And so we want to be able to help these businesses during this time. Staff stands prepared to answer any questions, and I do see some folks in the audience that are local businesses that have waited patiently since about 1:45 to be able to share their perspective on this. So staff stands prepared to answer any questions the Board of Commissioners may have.
I think Sunday's a horrible day. I think you're gonna have to really monitor the traffic on 150th and what it's gonna actually do, because that just seems to be a bad day, especially if it's been not so nice a week and the weekend is gorgeous. You're gonna have an influx of people that are coming to the beach. And that's gonna propose a problem for a lot of people getting home. And that's one reason I didn't like it on Sunday. I don't have a problem with waiving the fees. I do have a problem with the city. Any hard costs associated with it need to be charged back to whoever it is. It's something I ran on, and I've always felt that way about every event that's going on. As long as they pay the hard costs, I don't have a problem with waiving fees.
I think the merchants down in Madeira Way have worked really hard this past couple months. They are struggling really bad down there, and they're trying to do everything they can to be a little imaginative with some of the things that they want to do in the events. Sunday, to me, I don't see a problem with it because the post office is closed. There will be construction at the end of the road. And this also will give the people a chance to recognize the fact that Madeira Way is going to be closed for a period of time and get the people used to going all the way up to 150th. Another block down the road is not going to hurt them. So I'm all for it. I wish them the best. You know, I support Madeira Way and the merchants there. I mean, they're a good group of people. They really try hard, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. And I think this would help them at least get through the Christmas holiday, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year.
I pretty much will have to agree with Nancy Hodges. I think it's a great idea. And as far as the traffic, maybe I'm missing something. I live on 150th. I have not noticed that much traffic on a Sunday.
I just remember when they closed it down for that thing that was on the weekend.
Yeah.
And traffic Saturday and Sunday was horrible for people getting across the bridge, getting, back down to Johns Pass or back to 140th to get home. Like one person told me it took him like 35 minutes to get from Publix to 131st, and he lived back in there. So that's what I was thinking of as far as the traffic goes. But it's something that we can look at and monitor along that way.
True.
Pam, what was the time that you all decided on?
For the event itself?
Yes.
To the public, it's 10 to 3, but we would actually have to close and probably grow. And vendors come in about 8 and to about 4, because you have to give about an hour, so that's close up shop.
Nobody can hear her at home.
Yep. You want to approach the microphone so we can hear you better? You didn't want to do that, did you?
Use the handheld one.
I'm Pam Wickberg, one of the owners of Harmony Sisters Gift Shop on Madeira Way. I don't live in Madeira Beach, I live in Gulfport, but I have chose to invest my money and my time into this community. We have put a lot of time into this. We've had 3 meetings with city staff, and they have been amazing, the city staff and us, and how to make this happen and come together. And the fact that a Sunday is a good day, you have people coming down 150th. If they're going to the beach, it's not that big of a deal to go that, and it's a right turn on red to go all the way down. So I can't really see where it would hold up that much traffic for them to then take a right onto Gulf. I mean, it is a right on red all the time, and it kind of has its own lane. The only thing that might hold that up is if there's a bunch of people going left rather than right, you know, and then it kind of blocks that right-hand lane. But we have put a lot of effort into this. We want to see ourselves succeed, and we're here because we like Madeira Beach. We chose to be here. If we all start failing, you're not going to have anything down there. And we're trying to make it work during this construction. We have some great ideas to maybe even have some of, an event. We might end up having a pet posh type thing. We may have an antique car show down there. There's a number of things that we can do that will also bring people from other communities as well as your local people. It gives them something to do every single week that they can come down. We plan on having different vendors, not all the same vendors all the time. So we're trying to mix it up. We've decided that our group of shopkeepers will have a small committee to actually choose the vendors, not whoever's doing the event themselves. They will do all the processing, but we're going to kind of have, like, if we don't feel they're a quality unit, or if they're repeating something that we have in one of our stores, that we really don't want to do that. So we're going to be still kind of hands-on in that. We do want an event coordinator. We've kind of been putting feelers out, but since it hasn't been approved, it's kind of hard to go any further with that. But we really, really see this as not just being something good for us, because it is, but we really see it as a thing to bring the community together. That, you know, every single week during the season, there's a changeover in a good number of people who are in the town. So that's positive for us. But you also give these people, we're talking maybe 3 or 4 produce booths, not just one, you know, some bakeries, things like that, things that people will want to walk downtown if they've already gone to church, or if they choose not to, whatever, but they come down with their kids. We hope to maybe even have a smaller section, maybe more for kids. We're not sure on that yet. We're working on it. And we hope to have it be a quality event, similar to the one that used to be on Mother's Day, and have high-quality vendors, and just, you know, really speak well of the community and of the businesses in the community. This is what your folks want. They want to tie into the downtown and have events, and what we're doing is saying we can do that. And maybe at some point, the developer's even willing to maybe tie something in, maybe have it one of their days where they can even, you know, let people know where they are in the project and that kind of thing, and possibly even be there if we find that that's something that they might want to do. So, any other questions? I have been to all 3 of the meetings. I mean, we have a communication plan. We have a bunch of stuff already laid out, so. All right.
I have a question for the city manager, I think, Pam, not you. I remember when I worked the Wednesday market for 2 or 3 years, however long it was there, and I don't really remember hard cost being a part, necessarily needing to be a part of it, okay? Because I remember everybody took care of their garbage. I mean, it wasn't, the vendors took care of their garbage. What are we talking hard cost? Because I don't believe in the city picking up a hard cost item either.
They closed the street off, they put the cones out, they did all that. So you get an employee, so now you get an employee you're paying time and a half on a Sunday. So there are hard costs involved in that.
We
I
have,
was just thinking of the flood.
that's the cost that we that we would incur as the city, but like previously stated, the developer on the project has agreed to assist financially. But I want to make sure that, you know, what the hard costs are, because in some cases, the recreation director told me that the event organizers that used to run the Wednesday market would stack up the cones and stack up the items for them. So staff
Yeah.
effectively just had to come and grab things. So there was a mutual benefit from, you know, we would have to go out there and set them up, or in some cases, they would drop them and they would set it up because they knew what the setup is. So there's things that effectively we as city staff need to do, but at the end of the day, we want at least the opportunity to try it out for 2 months to see what we can accomplish and really give the businesses that proverbial shot in the arm during the holiday season. And we didn't want to wait too long not to be able to assist them, because originally we wanted to get the board's authorization to do something in October. But to the credit of the merchants, they said, Jonathan, to do this right, we prefer to wait and do something in November. So they saw that it would place a burden on them and the city and agreed to say, hey, let's just work on something in November. They've had meetings 9 o'clock in the morning and got great turnout and participation. So they are mobilizing, and they are really taking on the ownership of this market to where it really would, I think, in my opinion, give you a good flavor of what Madeira Way merchants are about. And, you know, they've even talked about coining phrases, come shop the Madeira Way, and, you know, those types of things. So they're really excited about it, and we want to assist them, at least in the interim, till, you know, could be some additional momentum and some progress made.
Okay, and I just had one other thing. I know that we used to use on the Wednesday market, all of those huge, I mean, these flutter signs, there must have been 50 of them, and half of them would end up in the street and everything else. And I'm wondering if the sheriff's department has, you know, the signage that the sheriff's department uses, and it's digital, okay? Does that cost money to use that from the sheriff's department? I mean, can we have 2 of them placed, one on 150th and one on Gulf Boulevard? And that would be great. I think that would give excellent momentum to it.
We can use them. It just depends on, we have to get with the sheriff's office as far as what the messaging is, because you may be restricted on the types of messaging, because I know they let us do it for our special events and certain other special events, but we can certainly find out and see if that's a way, because we also want to inform folks that, hey, on Sunday, traffic patterns are changing, those types of things, so people know as well, and then encouraging people to shop downtown, et cetera. Right, yeah.
Jonathan, you brought up about the developer, and it says here the developer is just providing funding for the purpose of hiring an event coordinator or consultant, not the hard costs.
He did mention to me in a conversation that if there's not a desire to effectively waive something like the road closure fee, that he would be willing to pick up the costs associated with that. So he did mention that to me, yes.
And I think we try it for November and December, and then figure out, have you know, somebody come back with exactly what our costs are.
And what it does to traffic.
And then Pam and her group might come back and say, well, you know, maybe we should tweak this or tweak that, so it could.
We would definitely give like a full report. We would give a full report and.
Talk to the microphone. Talk to the microphone. Thank you.
Our plan is to give a report of what works, what doesn't, if we need to expand it, if we need to shrink it. What our hope is that it will grow. So we hope that we come back and give you a report that, hey, this is so great, we have this many vendors and this is where we're going. And we really, you know, we really want to keep going with this and maybe even expand it. So that's what our goal is. The first one would be the Saturday or the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend. So that Saturday is Small Business Saturday, so we'll be promoting that and then having it as a shop local, shop Madeira Way, and that's.
So we're only talking like 5 weeks when we say November, December.
We're completely aware. It'll probably only be one event in November and one in December, but depending on how that works.
It's not every Sunday?
Right now, we don't have a coordinator or anything, so that was part of the town's or cost as well.
He's not doing
You know, that we don't know if we can pull off every week through the next 5 weeks, or from that Thanksgiving weekend through, we don't know if we can do that. If we get a good enough coordinator, we may be able to.
Okay.
But, I don't know. Probably minimum 2. If we can swing it, we'd love to do every week before Christmas.
All right.
All right?
Thank you very much.
So is consensus from the board to move forward accordingly as requested by staff? Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a good one.
All right, great. With that, the meeting is adjourned at 5:05.